Welcome back, my wonderful family of readers. If you're ready to be swept away by this tale of unexpected love and second chances, subscribe now and tell me in the comments where you're watching from, because tomorrow, another riveting story awaits you, and you definitely don't want to miss what's coming next. Now, let's dive in and discover where this extraordinary journey takes us. The cleaner with the mop froze as the Russian Mafia patriarch entered the ballroom, and in a moment of pure panic, her grandmother's voice echoed in her head. What came out of her mouth next, in flawless Russian, would either save her life or end it, but either way, every dangerous man in that room would finally see her. Aurora's hands were sweating through her latex gloves, which seemed cosmically unfair considering she was literally holding a mop. She'd positioned herself near the service entrance, a strategic location that screamed, "I'm just here to clean. Please continue your criminal conspiracy," without acknowledging my existence. The Grandeur Hall had transformed into something out of an oligarch's fever dream. White roses the size of cabbages erupted from crystal vases. Ice sculptures of eagles, because subtlety was apparently not on the Volkov family crest, wept expensive vodka into waiting glasses. The chandeliers had been polished to within an inch of their lives, partially by Aurora herself, who'd spent an hour on a ladder wondering if this was how people ended up in witness protection. Vladimir Alexei Volkov stood near the entrance like a designer-suited sentinel, his dark eyes scanning the room with the intensity of a man who saw threats in shadows and opportunities in silence. Aurora had learned to read his moods over the past few weeks, a survival skill, really. Tonight, he was tense. His jaw carried that particular set that suggested someone somewhere was going to have a very bad evening. She focused on her mop, swirling it in small, purposeful circles. Invisible. Forgettable furniture. Peterson. She jumped, nearly knocking over her bucket. Vladimir had materialized beside her with the stealth of a very expensive ghost. Yes, sir. She kept her eyes on the floor, which was, ironically, her job anyway. My father arrives in 10 minutes. His voice was low, measured. He is particular about cleanliness. The old Soviet way, everything must be perfect. The floor is perfect, sir. She gestured to the gleaming marble, which reflected the chandelier light like a mirror. You could perform surgery on it. His mouth twitched, almost a smile, almost. Let's hope it doesn't come to that. Before Aurora could unpack that deeply concerning statement, the room shifted. It was subtle, a change in air pressure, a collective straightening of spines, a sudden silence that felt like the moment before a thunderstorm. Even the ice sculpture eagles seemed to stand at attention. Alexei Volkov had arrived. He entered the ballroom with the slow, deliberate gait of a man who'd never rushed for anything in his life because everything waited for him. He was shorter than his son, broader, with silver hair swept back from a face that looked like it had been carved from Siberian granite and left out in the cold to harden. His suit was immaculate but old-fashioned, the kind that spoke of Soviet-era tailors and a fundamental distrust of modern fashion. But it was his eyes that made Aurora's grip tighten on her mop. They were pale, almost colorless, and they missed nothing. They swept across the room like searchlights, cataloging, assessing, judging. Vladimir moved forward, and Aurora watched father and son embrace. A brief, stiff gesture that suggested both deep affection and mutual wariness, like two bears acknowledging territory. They spoke in rapid Russian. Aurora's grandmother had taught her the language with the fervor of someone preserving a dying art, forcing young Aurora to conjugate verbs over breakfast and practice. Pronunciation until her accent was flawless. At the time, Aurora had considered it a form of elaborate torture. Now, eavesdropping on what was clearly a private conversation, she realized it was more like having a superpower she'd never asked for. The shipment was delayed, Vladimir was saying, but everything is in place. Delayed, Alexei's voice was granite scraping against steel. Delays are excuses. Excuses are weakness. Not weakness, caution. The FBI has been. The FBI is always watching. We do not change for them. We make them change for us. Aurora's mop moved in smaller circles. She was absolutely not listening. She was absolutely not understanding. She was absolutely not mentally composing her own obituary. Then Alexei's colorless eyes landed on her. She felt it like a physical touch, cold, assessing, uncomfortably thorough. Her heart performed an elaborate gymnastics routine in her chest. This was it. This was the moment she'd been dreading since she took this job, the moment someone actually saw her. Who is this? Alexei's Russian cut through the air like a blade through butter. Vladimir glanced at Aurora and she saw something flicker in his eyes. Warning, concern, indigestion. It was impossible to tell with Mafia bosses. A cleaner father, no one important. No one important. The words should have been a relief. Her invisibility confirmed, her safety assured. Instead, they stung with unexpected sharpness. Alexei took a step toward her, his cane, a polished mahogany thing with a silver wolf's head handle, clicking against her perfect floor. She understands Russian. It wasn't a question, it was a statement. Somehow he knew. The room held its breath. Vladimir's hand moved almost imperceptibly toward his jacket, where Aurora was fairly certain he kept something significantly more dangerous than a wallet. And in that moment, with a room full of dangerous men watching, with her life potentially hanging by a thread, with every instinct screaming at her to stay silent, Aurora's grandmother's voice echoed in her head. Not a lesson in grammar or pronunciation, but something she'd said 1,000 times. Respect costs nothing, child, but disrespect costs everything. Aurora looked up, met those pale, predatory eyes, and spoke in absolutely flawless Russian. Dobry večer, господин Volkov, dobro pожаловать. Good evening, Mr. Volkov, welcome. Then, because her brain apparently had a death wish, she bowed her head slightly, the old-fashioned gesture of respect her grandmother had taught her, the kind that hadn't been common since before the Soviet Union fell. The silence that followed could have suffocated planets. Alexei Sergei Volkov stared at Aurora with the intensity of a man trying to determine if she was a threat, an asset, or simply an anomaly in his carefully ordered universe. The entire ballroom had transformed into a tableau of frozen criminals. Men who'd probably committed murders without blinking now stood, motionless, waiting to see if the cleaning lady had just signed her own death warrant. Vladimir's face had gone carefully blank, which Aurora was beginning to recognize as his "someone is about to die, and I'm calculating whether it should be them or me" expression. Then Alexei laughed. It was a rusty sound, like a gate that hadn't been opened in decades finally swinging wide, deep and genuine and utterly unexpected. He stepped closer, leaning on his cane, and examined Aurora the way a jeweler might examine a curious stone, uncertain if it was a diamond or just particularly shiny glass. "You speak Russian," he said, still in Russian, a smile playing at the corners of his mouth. "Not tourist Russian, not textbook Russian, real Russian, Moscow Russian." "My grandmother," Aurora managed, her voice steadier than she felt. "She was from Yakutsk, she insisted." "Yakutsk." Alexei's eyes lit up with something that might have been delight or might have been the kind of dangerous interest that preceded unfortunate accidents. "The coldest city on earth. They breed tough women there, hard as the permafrost." He glanced at Vladimir. "This one knows how to greet properly, with respect. When was the last time anyone in this room showed proper respect?" Vladimir's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. "Father, she's just a cleaner who speaks better Russian than half your men, I suspect." Alexei turned back to Aurora, switching to English now, his accent thick but his words precise. "What is your name, girl?" "Aurora Peterson, sir." Aurora, like the Northern Lights, beautiful name for someone who cleans floors. There was no mockery in his voice, just observation. "Tell me, Aurora Peterson with the Yakutsk grandmother, why do you work here, in this place for these people?" He gestured vaguely at the room, encompassing both the opulence and the underlying threat. It was a trap. It had to be a trap. Every answer was wrong, but Aurora had already jumped off the cliff, might as well enjoy the fall. "The pay is good," she said honestly, "and I'm good at being invisible." "Invisible?" Alexei's laugh rumbled again. "Child, you just spoke Russian to a room full of men who kill people for less. You are many things now, but invisible is not one of them." He had a point. "Father," Vladimir interjected, his voice carrying a warning edge, "the other guests are waiting. Perhaps we should have this girl tell us about her grandmother," Alexei interrupted, settling into a nearby chair with the air of a man who decided entertainment had arrived. "I have been in America too long. Everyone here speaks English, drinks watered-down vodka, and thinks respect is something you post on social media. It's refreshing to meet someone who understands the old ways." Aurora shot a desperate glance at Vladimir, silently pleading for rescue. His expression was unreadable, but there was something in his eyes, exasperation mixed with what might have been grudging amusement. He gave her the smallest of nods. Permission, or acknowledgement that she was on her own. "My grandmother Yekaterina," Aurora began, still gripping her mop like a security blanket, "came to America in 1991. She said Yakutsk was beautiful but brutal, 60 below zero in winter. The kind of cold that turns your breath to ice crystals before it leaves your mouth. Yes, Alexei leaned forward. And the people. She said they were like the land, hard on the outside but warm inside. You had to earn the warmth. Alexei studied her for a long moment, then tapped his cane against the floor once, twice, 3 times. Your grandmother was wise. She taught you well, not just language but philosophy. He pushed himself to his feet, and Aurora noticed Vladimir's shoulders relax fractionally. You will join us for dinner. Aurora's brain short-circuited. What? Dinner, food, conversation, you do eat, yes. Sir, I'm the cleaning lady. I can't. In Russia, we have saying, the person who shares your language shares your soul. You speak my language. Tonight you are not cleaning lady. Tonight you are guest. He looked at Vladimir. She sits at our table. Vladimir's expression suggested he'd rather eat ground glass, but he nodded curtly. Of course, father. Whatever you wish. What I wish, Alexei said, his voice dropping to something colder, is to be surprised less by cleaning ladies and more by my own organization's efficiency. But we work with what we have, yes. The words were directed at Vladimir, but carried enough edge to draw blood. The tension between father and son was thick enough to cut with a knife, or possibly with the various weapons Aurora suspected were hidden throughout the room. Aurora, Vladimir said, and she noticed he used her first name for the first time. There's a powder room down that hall. Clean yourself up. Someone will bring you appropriate attire. His eyes met hers, and there was a warning in them clear as day. Play along, don't embarrass anyone, and maybe you'll survive the night. I don't, she started. This is not request, Alexei interrupted cheerfully. This is Russian hospitality, also possibly kidnapping. Americans are always confused about the difference. And with that utterly terrifying statement delivered with grandfatherly warmth, he turned and strode toward the main table, his cane clicking against Aurora's perfect floor. Aurora stood frozen, mop in hand, trying to process what had just happened. Around her, the other guests slowly resumed breathing and moving, though most still stared at her with expressions ranging from confusion to outright hostility. She'd just gone from invisible to the center of attention in the most dangerous room in Chicago. Well, said a voice beside her, Vladimir, who'd apparently stayed behind while his father held court. That was unexpected. I'm so sorry, Aurora whispered urgently. I didn't mean to. Speak Russian. Show respect to the most dangerous man in this hemisphere. Vladimir's lips curved into something that wasn't quite a smile. My father is complicated. He respects strength even when it comes in unusual packages. But Aurora, his voice dropped lower. Do not mistake his amusement for protection. Tonight you are interesting. Tomorrow you could be inconvenient. And my father eliminates inconveniences. Noted, Aurora managed through a throat that had gone dry. So, what? I just have dinner with the Russian Mafia and hope I don't accidentally witness anything that requires me to die mysteriously. That would be the ideal scenario, yes. Vladimir glanced toward his father, who was now barking orders at terrified waiters in rapid Russian. Stay close to me. Don't speak unless spoken to. And for God's sake, Don't mention anything you might have overheard about shipments or the FBI. I didn't hear anything. Aurora lied automatically. Good, keep that. Selective deafness. It's the most valuable survival skill you can have here. He paused, and something shifted in his expression. The powder room is the third door on the left. The dress will be a size. He glanced at her with an assessment that was purely practical but still made her cheeks heat. 6, I think. Someone will bring it to you. How do you just have formal dresses in various sizes lying around? Aurora asked before she could stop herself. Vladimir's almost smile returned. You'd be surprised what we keep in inventory. Now go. My father's patience has limits, and you've already tested several of them tonight. Aurora nodded and fled toward the powder room, her mind racing faster than her feet. She pushed through the ornate door and found herself in a bathroom that was nicer than her entire apartment. All marble and gold fixtures and mirrors that showed her exactly how out of place she was. Her reflection stared back, hair pulled into a practical bun, minimal makeup. Cleaning uniform wrinkled from hours of work. She looked like someone who scrubbed floors for a living, because she was someone who scrubbed floors for a living. And now she was about to have dinner with the Russian Mafia. Babushka, she whispered to her reflection, using the Russian word for grandmother. If this is what respect gets me, I'm sending you a very strongly worded complaint from the afterlife. A knock at the door made her jump. Miss Peterson, a young woman's voice nervous and deferential. I have your dress. Aurora opened the door to find a terrified-looking server holding a garment bag like it contained nitroglycerin. The girl thrust it at Aurora and practically ran. Inside the bag was a dress that probably cost more than Aurora's car. Simple, elegant, black. The kind of thing that whispered expensive instead of shouting it. There were shoes, too, heels that looked manageable, and even jewelry, understated but clearly real. They'd thought of everything, which meant this wasn't spontaneous. Somewhere in this organization, someone kept emergency formal wear for unexpected guests. That was either impressively prepared or deeply disturbing. Probably both. Aurora changed quickly, her hands shaking slightly as she zipped up the dress. It fit perfectly, which was somehow more unsettling than if it had been wrong. She let her hair down from its bun, finger-combed it into something resembling style, and added the jewelry with hands that had steadied through sheer force of will. The woman in the mirror now looked like she belonged at a Mafia dinner party. Aurora wasn't sure if that was progress or a concerning development in her life choices. She took a deep breath, squared her shoulders, and walked back into the ballroom. Vladimir stood waiting near the table, and something flickered in his eyes when he saw her. Surprise, maybe, or appreciation, or possibly just relief that she cleaned up well enough not to embarrass his father. Better, he said simply, offering his arm in a gesture that was probably meant to be gentlemanly, but felt more like a handler guiding a bomb through a crowded room. Aurora took it, and together they walked toward the main table where Alexei Volkov sat surrounded by some of the most dangerous men in America, all of whom were now looking at her, with expressions ranging from curiosity to calculation. She'd survived the greeting. Now she just had to survive dinner. How far would you go to honor the values someone taught you, even if it meant stepping into danger? Drop your thoughts below. I want to hear what you would have done. The seat Vladimir guided her to was, naturally, directly next to Alexei. Because why would the universe give her a break and stick her at the far end of the table where she could quietly panic in peace? The chair, high-backed, ornate, probably worth more than her student loans, scraped against the marble as Vladimir pulled it out for her. Aurora sat with as much grace as she could muster, which was approximately the grace of a giraffe learning to ice skate. "There," Alexei said with satisfaction, patting the table beside him. "Now we have interesting dinner companion. These men," he gestured dismissively at the other guests, several of whom looked like they could bench press a sedan. "They talk only of business, money, territory. Boring. You, Aurora with the Yakutsk grandmother, you will tell me stories." "Father," Vladimir said from his seat directly across from Aurora, his tone carrying a warning, "perhaps we should discuss The business can wait," Alexei interrupted, waving his hand imperiously. "When was last time I had dinner with someone who speaks proper Russian? Your men, Volodya." He used the diminutive of Vladimir's name with casual affection that somehow made it sound like both endearment and criticism. "They speak Russian like Americans trying to order borscht. All wrong sounds, no soul." A server appeared at Aurora's elbow, pouring wine into a crystal glass that caught the chandelier light and threw tiny rainbows across the white tablecloth. She watched the deep red liquid swirl and thought, somewhat hysterically, that at least if she was poisoned, it would be with expensive wine. "You don't drink?" Alexei asked, noticing her hesitation. "I do just, slowly, sir." "Smart girl. Americans drink too fast. They think alcohol is for getting drunk. No, alcohol is for loosening the tongue, warming the heart, and making terrible ideas seem reasonable." He raised his glass. "Za Zdorovai, to health." "Za Zdorovai," Aurora echoed, clinking her glass against his and taking a careful sip. The wine was velvet and smoke and probably cost more per bottle than she made in a week. "So," Alexei leaned back, studying her with those pale, unnerving eyes, "your grandmother from Yakutsk. She must have told you stories. What did she say about the old country?" This was safer ground. Stories were neutral territory. Weren't they? She said Russia was beautiful and terrible, like a fairy tale that hadn't decided yet if it wanted a happy ending. Alexei's laugh boomed across the table. "Yes, exactly this. You see, Volodya, this is poetry, this is understanding." He turned back to Aurora. "What else?" She said the winters there were so cold that words would freeze in the air. You'd speak, and the words would just hang there like ice crystals. Then in spring, when everything thawed, you'd hear all the conversations from winter floating around like ghosts. "Beautiful nonsense," Alexei declared, clearly delighted. "But the best stories are always beautiful nonsense. In truth, the cold was real enough. I remember winters where the snow came up to second-floor windows, where vodka would freeze in the bottle if you left it outside for 10 minutes. He paused, his expression growing distant. Your grandmother she left in 91, when the Union fell. Yes, she said she waited until she was sure it was really over. She didn't trust it at first. Smart woman, many of us didn't trust it, some still don't. His eyes sharpened. And she taught you Russian, not just words, but the old ways, the proper greeting. Why? Aurora chose her words carefully. She said that language without culture is just noise, that if I was going to speak Russian, I needed to understand what the words meant beneath the words. Alexei was quiet for a moment, then nodded slowly. Your grandmother understood something many forget. Respect is not just action, it is intention. You greeted me properly not because someone told you to, but because you understood why it mattered. He glanced at Vladimir. This is what I try to teach. But does anyone listen? No. Vladimir's expression suggested he'd heard this particular lecture before, possibly several hundred times. Father, with respect, times change. The old ways. The old ways are old because they work, Alexei interrupted. New ways are new because people are too lazy to learn the old ones. He turned back to Aurora. You see what I deal with. My own son thinks tradition is obstacle instead of foundation. Aurora took another sip of wine, desperately trying to become invisible again. She'd somehow walked straight into a family argument that probably had decades of history and several bodies buried in it. I think, she said carefully, surprised at her own boldness. The wine was definitely loosening something. Both can be true. Tradition gives you roots, but roots alone don't make a tree grow. You need new branches too. The silence that followed was sharp enough to cut. Aurora immediately regretted every life choice that had led to this moment, starting with being born and ending with opening her mouth just now. Then Alexei threw his head back and laughed, loud and genuine. Ha, she lectures me. The cleaning lady lectures Alexei Volkov about trees and tradition. He slapped the table, making the crystal jump. I like her. Volodya, I like her, she has spine. Yes, Vladimir said dryly, his dark eyes fixed on Aurora with an expression she couldn't quite read. I'm noticing that. You know what his problem with pretty spine? Alexei continued, his good humor suddenly edged with something colder. Pretty spine breaks just like regular spine, sometimes easier because it is not used to pressure. He leaned closer to Aurora, his voice dropping. You are clever girl, quick tongue, respectful manner, but clever people make mistake. They think being clever keeps them safe. It doesn't, you understand. Aurora's mouth had gone dry. Yes, sir. Good, because tonight you are guest. You are interesting, but tomorrow, he shrugged. Tomorrow you are cleaning lady again, and cleaning lady who knows too much is. He made a gesture, somewhere between a shrug and a dismissal. The threat was clear without being explicit. I understand, sir, Aurora said, keeping her voice steady. I'm very good at forgetting things. Wait. Shall see. Alexei sat back as servers appeared with the first course, some kind of elaborately plated fish that looked more like art than food. Now we eat, and you will tell me more about this grandmother of yours. I want to know what kind of woman raises granddaughter with proper Russian manners in America. This is mystery worth solving. The dinner progressed with the surreal quality of a fever dream. Aurora found herself telling stories about her grandmother, carefully edited versions that contained no last names, no specific locations, nothing that could be traced or verified. Alexei listened with genuine interest, occasionally interjecting with his own tales of Soviet-era Russia, of winters and hardship, and a world that no longer existed except in memory. Vladimir watched the entire exchange with the alertness of a hawk, his food barely touched, his eyes moving between his father and Aurora like he was trying to solve an equation that kept changing variables. The other men at the table, broad-shouldered, hard-eyed, radiating danger like cologne, ate in near silence, occasionally murmuring to each other in Russian that Aurora absolutely did not listen to and definitely did not understand. She caught fragments anyway, her grandmother's thorough training making it impossible not to parse the words floating past her. Shipment arrives Thursday. FBI is watching the port. The Italians are getting nervous. She focused on her plate with laser intensity, cutting her fish into increasingly smaller pieces that she barely tasted. Every instinct screamed that she was hearing things she shouldn't, learning things that transformed her from interesting guest to liability that needed handling. "You are quiet suddenly," Alexei observed. "The food is not good." "The food is wonderful," Aurora said honestly. "I'm just overwhelmed. This isn't exactly my usual Wednesday night." "No, what is your usual Wednesday night?" "Ramen noodles and Netflix." "Sir." Alexei snorted. "Ramen. My son could buy you 1,000 restaurants, but you eat ramen. This is very American." He glanced at Vladimir. "You should take her to proper Russian restaurant. Let her taste real food, not this French nonsense." Aurora nearly choked on her wine. Vladimir's expression suggested his father had just proposed they juggle live grenades. "Father, I don't think." "You never think," Alexei interrupted cheerfully. "This is your problem, always calculating, never feeling. This girl speaks Russian, understands respect, and you treat her like furniture. Meanwhile, you date those." He waved his hand dismissively. "Those American girls with no substance, all plastic and ambition." "We're not discussing my dating life," Vladimir said, his voice tight with controlled irritation. "Why not? I am old man. I want grandchildren before I die. You think grandchildren come from nowhere. You must actually talk to women, Valadia, not just order them around." Aurora desperately wanted to sink through the floor and disappear into the Earth's core. This was worse than overhearing criminal conspiracy. This was family dynamics, Russian Mafia style. "Perhaps," she ventured, "we could talk about something else." "Yes," Alex agreed. "Let us talk about why pretty girl with good education. You have education, yes." "Bachelor's in art history," Aurora admitted. "Art history, perfect waste of money. I love it." Alexei was clearly enjoying himself immensely. "So, pretty girl with useless degree works as cleaning lady. This is American dream. This is what they promise." "Student loans are very real, sir, and art history jobs are very not real." Alexei studied her thoughtfully. "You know what is also real? Opportunity. Smart girl like you, speaks Russian, understands art, can be invisible when needed. He trailed off meaningfully. Vladimir's entire body tensed. Father, no. Know what? I simply observe that skills have value. That value should be compensated. She's not. Vladimir caught himself, jaw clenching. This isn't the time. There is never time for anything with you, Alexei grumbled. But he dropped the subject, turning his attention to the main course that servers were now presenting with theatrical flourish. Aurora's heart was pounding. She wasn't entirely sure what had just happened, but it felt like she'd narrowly avoided something. A job offer, a recruitment, a very polite death sentence phrased as opportunity. The meal continued, course after elaborate course, each one more intimidating than the last. Aurora navigated the multiple forks and knives with the etiquette her grandmother had drilled into her alongside Russian verbs, silently thanking the woman for her obsessive attention to detail. As dessert arrived, some kind of deconstructed pavlova that looked like a cloud had been murdered on a plate. The atmosphere in the room shifted again. Men began checking watches, exchanging glances. The social portion of the evening was ending. Business was about to begin. Aurora, Alexei said, wiping his mouth with his napkin, you have been delightful company. But now comes the boring part. Men talking about money and problems. You should go. It wasn't a suggestion. Of course, Aurora said, standing with as much dignity as she could muster in borrowed heels. Thank you for. This has been terrifying, Alexei supplied helpfully. Yes, I imagine it has, but you did well. Your grandmother would be proud. Something in Aurora's chest tightened unexpectedly. Thank you, sir. Vladimir stood as well. I'll walk you out. That's not, Aurora started. I insist. They left the table together, walking through the ballroom that had been transformed by dinner from intimidating to surreal. The ice eagles had melted into abstract sculptures. The roses were starting to wilt under the chandelier heat. Everything beautiful was temporary, Aurora thought, especially safety. Vladimir didn't speak until they reached the service entrance, returning her symbolically to her proper place. The staff area, the invisible zone. That, he said finally, was the strangest dinner I've had in years, and I once ate with a Serbian warlord who collected human teeth. I'm sorry, Aurora said automatically. I didn't mean to. Stop apologizing. Vladimir's voice was sharp but not unkind. You survived my father's attention. That's not a small thing. Most people who interest him end up dead or employed. Sometimes both. Which one am I heading toward? I don't know yet. He studied her in the dim service corridor, his face half in shadow. You're an anomaly, Aurora Peterson, a cleaning lady who speaks perfect Russian and can hold her own with the most dangerous man I know. I don't like anomalies. They're unpredictable. I'm not unpredictable. I'm extremely predictable. I clean floors, I go home, I eat ramen, I watch Netflix, I sleep. That's it. That's my entire life. That was your life, Vladimir corrected. Before tonight, now, he shook his head. Now you're something else. My father doesn't forget interesting people. and he doesn't let valuable assets walk away. I'm not an asset, I'm a person. In my world, people are assets. The question is what kind. He reached into his jacket. Aurora's heart jumped and pulled out a card. Plain white, embossed with a phone number and nothing else. Take this. If anyone approaches you, if anything strange happens, if you feel threatened, you call that number. Immediately. Why would anyone? Because you spoke Russian in a room full of criminals, because my father likes you. Because in this world, those things make you either valuable or dangerous, and sometimes there's no difference. He pressed the card into her hand. Keep your head down, Aurora. Forget everything you heard tonight, and for God's sake, stop being interesting. He turned and walked back toward the ballroom, leaving Aurora standing in the service corridor, holding a card that felt heavier than it should. She looked down at the simple white rectangle, then at the ballroom beyond, where powerful men were gathering to discuss things that would never appear on any news broadcast. Then she changed back into her cleaning uniform, folded the expensive dress carefully, and went back to work. Because floors didn't clean themselves, and her rent didn't pay itself, and she was just a cleaning lady. At least, that's what she kept telling herself as she mopped around the edges of conversations she absolutely wasn't listening to, in a language she absolutely didn't understand. 3 days passed without incident, which Aurora found more unnerving than if something had actually happened. She went to work, cleaned the usual offices and event spaces, and tried very hard not to think about Russian Mafia bosses who collected interesting people like some men collected vintage cars. The card Vladimir had given her stayed. In her wallet, tucked behind her driver's license where she could feel its presence every time she reached for her ID. A small, rectangular reminder that her life had shifted somehow, even if the shift wasn't visible yet. On Thursday afternoon, her manager called her into his office. Gerald Finch was a nervous man under the best circumstances, the kind who sweated through his shirts by noon and jumped at loud noises. Today, he looked like he'd been marinated in anxiety and left to cure in a panic room. "Aurora," he said, not quite meeting her eyes, "we need to talk about your assignment schedule." "Okay," she said slowly, settling into the chair across from his desk. "Is there a problem?" "No, no problem. Actually, quite the opposite. We've had a request, a specific request for you." Aurora's stomach dropped. "What kind of request?" Gerald pulled at his collar. "The Volkov organization has asked that you be assigned as the primary cleaner for all their events, exclusively. They've offered to. Well, they've offered to triple our usual rate, and they want you available on call." "On call," Aurora repeated flatly. "Yes, meaning when they need cleaning services, you'd be the one to respond. Within reason, of course. They understand you have other commitments, but they're willing to compensate, generously, very generously." He pushed a paper across the desk. "This would be your new rate per hour." Aurora looked at the number and nearly fell out of her chair. It was more than generous. It was obscene. It was the kind of money that could eliminate her student loans in a year, maybe less. "This is too much," she said. "I know it seems." "No, Gerald, This is way too much for cleaning. This is we own you now money. Gerald's face confirmed her suspicion. They were very insistent, and Aurora, I can't afford to say no to the Volkovs. Nobody can. This company depends on their business. If they want you specifically and I refuse. He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't need to. Aurora closed her eyes. This was it. The moment Vladimir had warned her about. She'd become interesting, and now she was being collected. What if I say no? She asked, though she already knew the answer. Then I'd have to let you go. I'm sorry, Aurora, I really am, but this is the situation. So her choices were, accept the golden handcuffs and become a Mafia asset, or lose her job and probably gain some very dangerous enemies. Some choice. I need to think about it, she said. You have until tomorrow morning. They want an answer by then. Gerald looked miserable, which was somehow worse than if he'd been callous about it. For what it's worth, they said you'd be safe, that you'd be under their protection, whatever that means. Aurora knew exactly what it meant. It meant she'd be valuable enough to protect. It also meant she'd be owned. She left the office in a daze, her mind racing. By the time she got home to her tiny studio apartment, she'd made and unmade the decision a dozen times. She stood in her kitchen, really just a hot plate and a mini fridge in a corner, and stared at Vladimir's card lying on her counter where she'd left it that morning. If anything strange happens, he'd said. This qualified. She picked up her phone, dialed the number, and waited. It rang once. Aurora, Vladimir's voice, like he'd been expecting her call. Maybe he had been. They offered me a job, she said without preamble. Or maybe a prison sentence disguised as a job. I can't quite tell which. I heard. My father moves fast when he wants something. Your father wants a cleaning lady on retainer. That's what I am now. A particularly interesting mop. You're more than that and you know it. A pause. Are you going to accept? Do I have a choice? There's always a choice. The question is whether you can live with the consequences of saying no. Aurora laughed, sharp and bitter. That's not a choice. That's a gun to my head with decorative wrapping. Welcome to my world. His tone was dry but not unsympathetic. Look, I can't tell you what to do, but I can tell you that if you accept, you'll be under our protection. My father doesn't take care of his people lightly, but when he does, he's serious about it. No one touches what's his. I'm not a possession. In this life, everyone is something. The question is whether you'd rather be a protected asset or a vulnerable liability. The brutal honesty was almost refreshing. No pretense, no sugar-coating, just the cold calculation of survival. I need to know something, Aurora said. That dinner, all those conversations I definitely didn't overhear. Am I already a liability? Is this just a way to keep me close enough to control? Silence stretched across the line. Then, partially, but that's not the only reason. My father genuinely likes you. He thinks you have potential beyond scrubbing floors, and he's usually right about people. What kind of potential? The useful kind, the valuable kind, the kind that keeps you alive and comfortable instead of struggling with ramen and student loans. You remember that. I remember everything, Aurora. It's how I've stayed alive this long. Another pause. The offer is real, the protection is real, but so are the expectations. Once you're in, getting out is complicated. Complicated like I'd lose a good job, or complicated like I'd lose my kneecaps. Complicated like it depends on what you know and how much you're worth when you try to leave. His voice softened slightly. But that's years away, if ever. Right now, you're facing student loans and rent. This solves those problems. Is it ideal? No. But ideal doesn't exist in any world, legitimate or otherwise. Aurora looked around her apartment. The water stain on the ceiling she couldn't afford to fix, the furniture from thrift stores, the reality of being one emergency away from financial disaster. Then she thought about her grandmother, who'd fled Russia for the promise of something better, who'd worked herself to exhaustion so Aurora could go to college and study art history and have choices. What would Babushka say about this choice? Probably something like, in winter, you take the warmth where you find it. You can worry about the price when spring comes. I'll take the job, Aurora said quietly, but I want something in return. You're in no position to negotiate. I know, but I'm doing it anyway. I want to promise that I stay just a cleaner. I'm not getting involved in whatever else you do. I show up, I clean, I leave. That's it. I don't want to be some asset that gets leveraged or used or turned into something I'm not. Vladimir was quiet for a long moment. I can't promise that. My father has plans, and he doesn't share them all with me. But I can promise that as long as you're smart, as long as you keep your head down and your mouth shut, you'll be as safe as anyone in this life can be. That's not reassuring. It's not meant to be, it's meant to be honest. She heard him exhale. Take the job, Aurora, pay off your debts, save money. And when the time comes, if it comes, you'll have options you don't have now. That's the best I can offer. Okay, she said, and hated how defeated she sounded. Okay, I'll tell Gerald tomorrow. Good, there's an event Saturday night. Small gathering, you'll work it. Standard pay plus bonus. Consider it a trial run. A trial run for what? For seeing if you can handle being part of this world without breaking. He hung up before she could respond. Aurora stood in her kitchen for a long time, phone in hand, feeling like she'd just sold something she couldn't get back. Not her soul, exactly. Maybe just her peace of mind. Her illusion that she could stay invisible, untouched by the dangerous currents that ran beneath the surface of the city. That night she dreamed of her grandmother's stories, of Yakutsk winters where words froze in the air, of survival that required hardness wrapped around warmth, of choices that weren't really choices, but just different ways of saying yes to necessity. When she woke up, she called Gerald and accepted the offer. Saturday came too quickly. Aurora arrived at the Grandeur Hall 2 hours before the event, as instructed. The gathering was smaller than the dinner with Alex, only about 20 guests, but the atmosphere was somehow more intense. These weren't just dangerous men playing at civility. This was actual business. Vladimir met her at the service entrance, looking sharp in a charcoal suit that probably cost more than her car. "Simple night," he said without preamble. "These are business partners from the East Coast. They're here to discuss territory agreements. You clean, you stay quiet, you don't react to anything you hear. Understood?" Crystal clear. "Good, because these men aren't as charmed by Russian-speaking cleaning ladies as my father is. They're more likely to see you as a problem that needs solving. You really know how to motivate an employee." His mouth twitched. "I'm keeping you alive, Aurora. Motivation comes second to survival." The event proceeded with mechanical precision. Aurora cleaned, refreshed drinks when signaled, and perfected the art of being present but unseeable. The conversations around her were in English this time, probably because the East Coast partners didn't speak Russian, and they were brutally direct about things that would have led to decades in prison if any law enforcement had been listening. Territory, distribution, competition, elimination. They discussed murder the way other people discussed quarterly earnings. Aurora's hands didn't shake as she worked. She'd made her choice. This was the price. Halfway through the evening, one of the East Coast men, broad-shouldered, wearing a suit that strained against his muscles, grabbed her wrist as she reached to clear his glass. "Hey," he said, his grip tight enough to hurt. "You deaf? I said bring me bourbon, not this whiskey shit." "I apologize, sir," Aurora said evenly, not pulling away. "I'll get bourbon immediately." "See that you do." He released her wrist, leaving red marks. Aurora walked calmly to the bar, poured the bourbon, and brought it back. Her wrist throbbed. The man didn't apologize, didn't even look at her. She was furniture again. Problem solved. Except Vladimir had seen the entire exchange. She noticed his jaw tighten, saw his hand move toward his jacket in that way that suggested violence was being actively reconsidered. But he did nothing, said nothing, just watched as Aurora returned to her work, professional and unaffected. The evening ended without further incident. The East Coast partners left, satisfied with whatever agreements had been reached. Vladimir stayed behind, supervising the cleanup, or so he claimed. Aurora suspected he was actually making sure she was okay, which was either considerate or calculating. With him, it was probably both. "Your wrist," he said when the last guest had gone. "It's fine." "It's not fine, let me see." "Vladimir." "Let me see, Aurora." She held out her arm. The bruises were already forming, dark purple shadows against her pale skin. Vladimir's expression went cold and flat in a way that was somehow more frightening than anger. "His name is Dmitry Kozlov," Vladimir said quietly. "He's crude, disrespectful, and, as of tonight, no longer someone we'll be doing business with." "Don't," Aurora said sharply. "Don't do anything because of me. I'm fine, it's just bruises." "You're under our protection now. That means something. Kozlov put his hands on you. That's unacceptable." "I'm a cleaner, this is." "You're not just a cleaner anymore." Vladimir looked at her intently. "You work for us now, for my family, and my family doesn't tolerate disrespect to our people. You need to understand that." "I understand that." "You're talking about killing someone because he was rude to me. That's insane." "Welcome to the Mafia, Aurora. We're all insane here." He pulled out his phone, typed something quickly. Kozlov will receive a message about appropriate behavior. Nothing permanent, just educational. Educational, Aurora repeated weakly. Trust me, he'll learn. Vladimir pocketed his phone and looked at her wrist again, his expression softening slightly. Ice that when you get home. And Aurora, next time someone touches you like that, you don't just take it. You come find me immediately. Understood? I thought the whole point was for me to be invisible. You're visible to me. That's enough. There was something in his voice, something that made Aurora's pulse quicken for reasons that had nothing to do with fear. She pulled her arm back, suddenly uncomfortable with the intimacy of the moment. I should finish cleaning, she said. It's done, go home, rest, and Aurora, he paused, you did well. Tonight, most people break the first time they hear what we really do. You didn't even flinch. Maybe I'm broken in different ways. Or maybe you're stronger than you think. He turned toward the exit. Same time next week. There's another event, smaller. Just my father and some old friends from Moscow. He specifically requested you. Of course he did. Aurora gathered her things and left, driving home through streets that suddenly felt different, like she was seeing the city through a new lens, one that showed all the hidden darkness, all the deals made in shadows, all the violence dressed up in expensive suits. When she got home, she iced her wrist and stared at the ceiling, wondering if this was how it started for everyone in that world. One choice, one compromise, one moment of saying yes when you should have said no. Her phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. Your first paycheck will be direct deposited Monday. Welcome to the family. A.V. A.V. Alexei Volkov. Aurora deleted the text, but she couldn't delete the truth it represented. She wasn't just working for the Volkovs anymore. She was owned by them. And the truly terrifying part was how easily she was learning to accept it. The money hit Aurora's account Monday morning like a small financial bomb. She stared at the number on her banking app, refreshing it 3 times to make sure it wasn't a mistake. It wasn't. One night of work had paid more than she usually made in 2 weeks. She paid off 2 credit cards immediately, then sat staring at her laptop screen, watching her debt decrease by a number that would have taken her months to achieve before. It felt good. It felt dirty. It felt like both things could be true at the same time. Her phone rang. Unknown number, but she'd learned to recognize the pattern now. The Volkovs never called from the same number twice. Hello. Aurora, Alexei's gravelly voice, warm with something like genuine pleasure. You received payment, yes? Yes. Sir, thank you. Good, good. Now I have question for you. You are free this afternoon. Every instinct screamed that no was the wrong answer. I can be. Excellent. I need someone to accompany me to art gallery. My son is too busy with his boring business meetings, and everyone else I know thinks art is just expensive decoration. But you studied this, yes. Art history. Yes, sir, but... Then you come with me. I will send car at 2 o'clock. Wear something nice but not too nice. We are looking at art, not attending funeral. Mr. Volkov, I'm not sure I'm the right person. You are exactly right person. You understand art, you speak Russian, and you are not afraid of old man who everyone else treats like bomb about to explode. This makes you perfect. He paused. Also is not request. Car comes at 2. He hung up. Aurora looked at her phone, then at her closet, then back at her phone. She was going to an art gallery with a Russian mob boss. This was her life. Now apparently. The car arrived precisely at 2. A black sedan with tinted windows and a driver who said nothing, just opened the door and waited for her to get in. Aurora had chosen a simple navy dress and flats, hoping it hit the sweet spot between respectful and not trying too hard. Alexei was already in the back seat, dressed more casually than she'd seen him. Slacks, a crisp white shirt, no tie. He looked less like a Mafia patriarch and more like someone's distinguished grandfather, which somehow made him more unnerving. Good, he said, assessing her outfit with a quick glance. You look like person who appreciates art, not like person who wears art. This is important distinction. Thank you, I think. Is compliment. Americans always dress like peacocks, all showing off, no substance. He settled back as the car pulled away from her apartment building. Today, we go to private viewing. Collector is selling pieces from his estate. I am interested in several items, but I need someone to tell me if they are actually valuable or just expensive garbage. You want me to authenticate art? Aurora asked, alarmed. Sir, I'm not qualified to. You are more qualified than everyone else I know. They think Rembrandt is type of cheese. He waved his hand dismissively. I do not need expert. I need someone who understands why art matters, not just what it costs. You can do this. I can try. Good enough. The gallery was in a converted warehouse in an upscale neighborhood, all exposed brick and carefully arranged lighting. The kind of place where even the silence was expensive. A nervous man in an impeccable suit met them at the entrance, his smile welcoming but his eyes calculating as they landed on Alexei. Mr. Volkov, such a pleasure. I'm James Rothstein, the executor of the estate. Please come in. They were led through a space that showcased pieces ranging from classical portraiture to modern abstracts. Aurora's trained eye immediately started, cataloging periods, styles, potential authenticity issues. It had been years since she'd used her education for anything beyond trivia night, and the mental exercise felt like stretching muscles she'd forgotten she had. Alexei walked slowly, studying each piece with surprising intensity. At a large landscape, rolling hills under a dramatic sky, he stopped. What do you see? He asked Aurora. She stepped closer, examining the brushwork, the composition, the light. It's attempting to be romantic era, probably early 1800s. The technique is good but not exceptional. The frame is period appropriate, but the canvas preparation looks inconsistent with the claimed date. I'd guess it's a very good reproduction, maybe made in the 1920s or 30s. Alexei turned to Rothstein, who'd gone slightly pale. She is correct. We believed it to be authentic, but there has been some scholarly debate. So is fake. Alexei's voice was flat. And you are selling as real. This is called fraud, Mr. Rothstein. We've priced it accordingly, reflecting the uncertainty. Show us something real, Alexei interrupted. Something you are certain of. I do not waste time on maybes. Rothstein led them deeper into the gallery, his composure cracking slightly. They stopped before a smaller piece, a portrait of a young woman, dark-eyed and solemn, holding a single white flower. Aurora's breath caught. She knew this painting, or at least she knew of it. "This is a Zinaida Serebriakova," she said softly, stepping closer. "Russian artist, early 20th century. She was incredible, one of the few female painters of her era to gain recognition. This looks like it could be from her portrait series, probably painted between 1910 and 1914, before the Revolution." Alexei was very still beside her. "You know her work." "I wrote a paper on her in college. She painted women with such dignity, such strength. Even when everything around her was falling apart, her husband died, the revolution came. She lost everything, she kept painting." Aurora traced the air near the canvas, not quite touching. "This is real. I'd stake my degree on it." "Your degree in art history," Alexei said, a smile in his voice. "The one you say is useless." "Maybe not completely useless." "No, not useless at all." Alexei turned to Rothstein. "This painting, I buy it, name your price." The negotiation that followed was brief and brutal. Alexei didn't haggle so much as state what he would pay, and Rothstein, faced with the reality of who he was dealing with, accepted. Aurora suspected the price was actually fair, possibly even generous, but the lack of negotiation made it clear this wasn't really a transaction between equals. As they left with arrangements made for delivery, Alexei was quiet, thoughtful. "You know why I brought you today?" he asked when they were back in the car. "To authenticate paintings." "That too, but mainly to see if you could be honest when it mattered. You could have told me. Fake painting was real. I would not have known. You could have gained my trust through deception." "Why would I do that?" "Because is what most people do. They tell powerful people what they want to hear, not what is true. You told truth, even knowing I might be angry that first painting was fake." He looked at her intently. "This is rare quality, Aurora, valuable quality." "I just know art, sir." "No, you know integrity is much rarer than knowing art." He paused. "I have another job for you, real job, not just cleaning." Aurora's stomach tightened. "What kind of job?" "I collect things. Art mostly, but also antiques, rare books, historical items. I need someone to manage this collection, to authenticate, to catalog, to tell me what has value and what is garbage. Someone I can trust to be honest." "Sir, I'm not qualified to." "You just authenticated Serebriakova in 30 seconds. You spotted fake in 1 minute. You are plenty qualified." He leaned forward. "I pay you proper. Salary, real salary, not cleaning wages. You work for me directly. You keep my collection organized, you advise on purchases, you tell me when someone tries to cheat me. Is good job, yes." It was an incredible job. The kind of job she dreamed about when she was studying art history, before reality taught her that those jobs went to people with connections and trust funds. It was also a leash. A golden leash, but still a leash. "What about the cleaning?" she asked. "You still do that too when I need you at events. But this," he gestured broadly, "this is your real work now. You start next week. I show you the collection. You will love it. It's beautiful, even if half of it might be stolen." "That's not reassuring, sir." "Is not meant to be reassuring, is meant to be honest. I steal art from bad people. Sometimes I buy art from good people. Sometimes I don't know which is which, and this is where you help." He smiled, and for a moment there was something almost grandfatherly in it. "You think your grandmother would be proud. Her granddaughter managing collection for Russian criminal." Aurora thought about Babushka, practical, fierce, surviving. "I think she'd say I should negotiate for better pay." Alexei's laugh boomed through the car. "Yes, this is perfect answer. Okay, we negotiate. You tell me what you need." They spent the rest of the drive discussing salary, benefits, and working conditions like it was a normal job interview instead of a conversation about working for the Russian Mafia. By the time the car pulled up to her apartment, Aurora had agreed to terms that would not only eliminate her student loans but actually let her save money. Real money. The kind that meant choices, independence, maybe even a future that wasn't hand-to-mouth. She got out of the car in a daze, her mind reeling. "Aurora," Alexei called before she closed the door. "Thank you for being honest. Is rare gift, and I do not forget gifts." The car pulled away, leaving her standing on the sidewalk, wondering if she just made the best decision of her life or sold herself completely. Her phone buzzed. A text from Vladimir. "I heard about the job. Congratulations," or condolences. "I'm not sure which is more appropriate." She texted back, "Why didn't you warn me?" His response came immediately. Would it have changed anything? No, it wouldn't have. She'd already made her choice 3 days ago when she accepted the cleaning position. This was just the logical next step. Aurora went inside, made herself tea, and sat by her window watching the city lights flicker on as darkness fell. Somewhere out there, Alexei Volkov was planning whatever it was that men like him planned. Vladimir was handling whatever business required handling. And she was, what, part of it now, an employee, an asset, a survivor. Her grandmother had fled Russia with nothing, built a life from nothing, and taught Aurora that survival wasn't pretty but it was necessary. This job, managing art for a criminal, wasn't what either of them had imagined, but it was survival with dignity, with her skills being valued, with honest pay for honest work. Even if the employer was fundamentally dishonest in every other aspect of his life. Her phone rang again. This time she recognized the pattern. Vladimir. "Yes. Dinner tomorrow night," he said without preamble. "Just you, me, and my father. He wants to discuss your new role, and I need to make sure you understand what you're actually getting into." "I thought I already agreed." "You agreed to manage art. There's more to it than that. There's always more to it." He paused. "Aurora, I'm trying to help you here. Meet us for dinner. Let me explain how this really works." "Is this optional?" "What do you think?" "I think I'll see you tomorrow night. 7 o'clock, wear something nice. We're going to Konstantin's." He hung up before she could ask what or where Constantine's was. Aurora leaned back against her window, tea growing cold in her hands, and wondered at what point she'd stopped being surprised by any of this. When had dinner with the Russian Mafia become just another Thursday night? The answer, she realized, was the moment she'd spoken Russian to Alexei Volkov and frozen an entire room of dangerous men. Everything since then had just been falling with style, pretending the ground wasn't rushing up to meet her. Tomorrow, she'd learn what happened when she finally hit bottom. Tonight, she just sat in the darkness and tried to remember what her life had been like before she'd become interesting. Constantine's turned out to be a Russian restaurant tucked into a basement on the north side of Chicago, the kind of place that had no sign, no website, and probably no health inspection rating, because the inspector was too terrified to ask. The entrance was a nondescript door between a dry cleaner and a pawn shop, and if Vladimir hadn't been standing outside waiting for her, Aurora would have walked right past it. "You're on time," he said, and she couldn't tell if he was impressed or just making an observation. Punctuality seems important when the people you're meeting could make you disappear. Smart. He opened the door, revealing a narrow staircase descending into warm light and the smell of garlic and something rich and meaty. Welcome to the real Chicago, the one tourists never see. The restaurant below was small, intimate, with exposed brick walls covered in old photographs and Soviet-era memorabilia. A dozen tables at most, half of them occupied by men who looked like they'd been carved from the same granite as Alexei. The lighting was low, the music was something mournful and Russian, and every conversation stopped the moment Aurora and Vladimir entered. Then resumed, quieter, watchful. Alexei sat at a corner table, a position that let him see the entire room and both exits. Good tactics, Aurora thought distantly. Her life had gotten strange enough that she was now evaluating Mafia seating arrangements. Aurora, Alexei stood, kissing her cheeks in the traditional Russian way, 3 times alternating. The gesture was both warm and possessive, marking her as his in front of everyone watching. "You look lovely. Sit, sit. We have much to discuss." Vladimir held her chair, a courtesy that was becoming routine, and took the seat next to his father, forming a triangle where everyone could see everyone else. Also good tactics. "First," Alexei said, pouring vodka into 3 small glasses, "we toast. To new beginnings, to honest work, and to my son finally hiring someone with actual skills instead of just muscles and loyalty." "Father, is true, your men are very good at breaking things, less good at appreciating things. This is why I need Aurora." He raised his glass. "Na Zdorovai." They drank. The vodka was smooth, expensive, and burned in exactly the right way. "Now," Alexei said, settling back, "we discuss your new position, Vladimir. We'll explain details because he is good with details. I am good with big picture. Together, we make sure you understand both." Vladimir leaned forward, his expression serious. "My father's collection is extensive, over 200 pieces spread across 3 locations, some acquired legally, some less so. Your job is to catalog everything, verify authenticity where possible, and advise on future acquisitions. That's a lot more than I thought, Aurora admitted. It's a lot more than anyone thinks. My father has been collecting for 40 years. Some pieces are incredibly valuable. Some are worthless. He needs to know which is which because value matters for insurance, for inheritance, for— Vladimir paused. For leverage when necessary. Leverage, Aurora looked between them. Art is currency, Alexei explained. Sometimes more valuable than money because art can be moved across borders, hidden, sold quietly. A painting is easier to transport than $1,000,000 in. Cash is also more beautiful, which is nice bonus. So I'm not just managing a collection, I'm managing assets, criminal assets. Some are legitimate, Vladimir said. My father has purchased many pieces through proper channels, but others, yes, they're complicated. Which is why discretion is essential. You don't discuss the collection with anyone, ever. What you see, what you catalog, what you learn, it stays between us. Aurora took another drink of vodka, needing it. And if someone asks questions, if law enforcement gets involved— You know nothing, Alexei said simply. You are art consultant. You authenticate, you advise. Where pieces come from is not your concern. This is important, Aurora. You must be able to say honestly that you do not know provenance of items, because then you are protected. You are not criminal. You are just expert doing job. It was plausible deniability, carefully constructed. They were insulating her, giving her just enough knowledge to be useful but not enough to be culpable. It should have been comforting. Instead, it felt like a cage made of loopholes. What if I can't authenticate something? She asked. What if I'm wrong? Then you say you are not sure, and we get second opinion, Vladimir said. My father values honesty more than certainty. Better to admit uncertainty than to fake expertise. This is why I like you, Alexei interjected. You admitted you were not qualified, even when qualification would benefit you. Shows character. A server appeared, elderly woman with sharp eyes and gentle hands, and placed plates of food before them. Pelmeni, blini, beef stroganoff, pickled vegetables, dark bread. The kind of food that spoke of cold winters and survival, of making something beautiful from simple ingredients. Eat, Alexei commanded. We discuss business, but we do not let food get cold. This is sacrilege. They ate, and Aurora had to admit the food was incredible. Rich and complex, nothing like the Americanized Russian food she'd tried before. Alexei watched her reaction with satisfaction. Konstantin's grandmother's recipes, he said. She survived siege of Leningrad, learned to make something from nothing. These recipes are history, yes. Survival made delicious. It's amazing, Aurora said honestly. Many amazing things come from terrible circumstances. You remember this. Alexei's expression grew serious. Now I tell you something important. Something Vladimir thinks I should not tell you, but I disagree. Vladimir's jaw tightened, but he said nothing. Your position in my organization will make you interesting to many people, Alexei continued. Some will want to use you to get to me. Some will want information about collection. Some will want to know what you know, what you see, what you hear. He leaned forward. You must be very careful, Aurora. Trust no one except Vladimir and me. Not other employees, not friendly strangers, not people who seem sympathetic to your situation. Everyone is potential threat until proven otherwise. You're scaring her father, Vladimir said quietly. Good, scared people are careful people. Careful people stay alive. Alexei turned back to Aurora. I do not tell you this to frighten for fun. I tell you because I take responsibility seriously. You work for me now. This means I protect you, but I can only protect you if you are smart. I understand, Aurora said, though her appetite had diminished considerably. Do you? Vladimir's dark eyes fixed on her. Because this isn't just about art anymore. The moment you accepted this job, you became part of our world. That means you're valuable, which is good. But it also means you're a target, which is very bad. You need to change how you live, how you think, who you trust. I don't trust anyone, Aurora said. Not even us. She considered the question seriously. I trust you to act in your own interests. Right now, those interests include keeping me alive and useful, so yes, I trust you, within those parameters. Alexei laughed, delighted. See, this is intelligence. She understands incentives. Voladia, you should marry this girl. She is perfect. Father, Vladimir said through gritted teeth, we discussed this. We discussed your stubbornness. I disagree with your stubbornness, so I bring it up again. This is how family works. Aurora's face heated. I don't think. Is joke, Alexei said, though his eyes suggested it wasn't entirely a joke. Mostly joke. But seriously, you need protection beyond just employment. Vladimir will assign you security detail. I don't need security. You do, Vladimir interrupted. Starting tomorrow, you'll have someone watching your apartment, following you to work, ensuring you're safe. You won't always see them, but they'll be there. That's insane. I'm just managing art. You're managing millions of dollars in art for a Russian criminal organization, Vladimir corrected. That makes you incredibly valuable and incredibly vulnerable. The security isn't optional. Aurora looked between them, seeing the immovable certainty in both faces. This was happening whether she agreed or not. Fine, she said, because what choice did she have? But they stay outside my apartment. I'm not having some bodyguard watching me watch Netflix. Reasonable, Alexei agreed. See Voladia, she negotiates. I like this quality. The meal continued, conversation shifting to lighter topics. Alexei's stories of Soviet-era Russia, Vladimir's dry observations about the challenges of running a criminal enterprise in the digital age, Aurora's tales of art history mishaps and academic drama. It was surreal, sitting in a basement restaurant eating stroganoff with mobsters, laughing at jokes about KGB incompetence and FBI surveillance. But it was also, Aurora realized with some alarm, comfortable, natural, like this was becoming her normal. After dinner, Vladimir walked her to her car while Alexei held court with other patrons, men who approached his table with the deference usually reserved for royalty or extremely dangerous predators. You handled that well. Vladimir said as they reached her beat-up Honda, which looked extremely out of place on this street full of luxury vehicles. I didn't have much choice in handling it any other way. There's always a choice. You could have panicked, refused, tried to run. People do sometimes. He leaned against her car, and Aurora noticed the careful way he positioned himself between her and the street, eyes constantly scanning, protective even in casual conversation. "You're adapting faster than I expected. Is that good or bad?" "I haven't decided yet." He pulled out his phone, typed something quickly. "Your security detail starts tomorrow at 6 a.m. His name is Yuri. Former Russian military, completely loyal, won't bother you unless there's a problem. You'll barely notice him." A Russian bodyguard named Yuri. That's very on brand. Vladimir's mouth quirked. "We're nothing if not consistent." He straightened, suddenly serious. "Aurora, what my father said about trust, he's right. This life, it changes people, makes them paranoid, suspicious, hard. Don't let it make you hard. That's what happened to me. Don't let it happen to you." There was something raw in his voice, a vulnerability she hadn't heard before. For a moment, he wasn't a mafia boss's son. He was just a man who'd lost something along the way and couldn't quite remember what it was. "What if I'm already hard?" Aurora asked quietly. "You're not yet. You're careful, which is different. Hold on to that difference as long as you can." Before Aurora could respond, his phone buzzed. He glanced at it, and whatever he saw made his expression close off, the vulnerability disappearing behind practiced neutrality. "I have to go. Emergency at one of the warehouses. Nothing serious, but it needs handling." He opened her car door. "Drive safe. Text me when you get home." "You want me to text you?" "I want to know you arrived safely. This is part of the protection detail, Aurora. Get used to it." He walked away before she could argue, moving with that predatory grace toward a black SUV that materialized from nowhere. Aurora sat in her car for a moment, processing everything. Security details, millions in art, trust no one, text when you get home. Her life had officially become unrecognizable. She drove home through streets that felt different now, more dangerous, more complex, full of shadows that might contain threats or might just be shadows. When she parked outside her apartment building, she looked around carefully, wondering if Yuri was already out there somewhere, watching. Inside her apartment, she texted Vladimir, "Home safe." His response came immediately, "Good, sleep well. Tomorrow you start seeing the collection. My father's excited to show you. Try to match his enthusiasm." Aurora smiled despite everything. "I'll practice my impressed face." "Don't practice too much. He values authenticity, remember." "Right, authentic enthusiasm. Got it." "Good night, Aurora." "Good night, Vladimir." She set her phone down and looked around her apartment, small, shabby, familiar. How much longer would she live here? With the new salary, she could afford something better, something safer, something that didn't have water stains and questionable neighbors. But moving felt like accepting permanence, like admitting this wasn't temporary, wasn't just a job to get through until something better came along. This was her life now. Aurora changed into pajamas, made tea, and sat by her window one more time. Outside, in the shadows between streetlights, she thought she saw movement, a figure watching. Yuri, probably. Her new bodyguard, her new normal. She raised her tea mug in a small salute to whoever was out there, then closed the curtains. Tomorrow she'd see Alexei's collection. Tomorrow she'd step deeper into this world of beautiful things acquired through ugly means. Tomorrow she'd continue becoming someone she didn't quite recognize. Tonight she'd finish her tea and go to bed, pretending that normalcy was still an option, even though they both knew it wasn't. The first location turned out to be a penthouse in downtown Chicago, with a view that probably cost more per month than Aurora's annual salary used to be. Alexei met her in the lobby at 9 a.m. sharp, looking energized in a way that suggested this was his version of Christmas morning. "Today, you see what 40 years of collecting looks like," he said as the private elevator ascended. "Some pieces will make you weep with beauty. Some will make you weep with horror that I paid money for garbage. Both reactions are acceptable." The elevator doors opened directly into the penthouse, and Aurora stepped into what could only be described as organized chaos. Art covered every wall, landscapes next to abstracts next to portraits. No apparent organizing principle beyond it fits here. Sculptures occupied corners and tables. Display cases held smaller items, jewelry, manuscripts, decorative objects. It was a museum curated by someone with exquisite taste and no concept of restraint. "This is," Aurora trailed off, genuinely overwhelmed. "Too much?" Alexei asked, watching her reaction. "It's incredible. And yes, too much, but incredible too much." "Good answer." He gestured broadly. "All of this needs cataloging, provenance where possible, authentication, estimated value, condition reports. I have kept some records." He pointed to a desk buried under papers. "But they are, how do you say, incomplete?" Incomplete was generous. Aurora spent the first hour just trying to understand Alexei's organizational system, which appeared to be, "I'll remember where everything is," combined with, "if I write it down in Russian, no one can read it anyway." His notes were a mixture of Russian and English, dates and prices, mixed with personal observations like, "reminds me of Moscow in spring," and seller was sweating, probably stolen. "Mr. Volkov," Aurora said finally, holding up a particularly cryptic note that just said Prague, 1987, "do not ask. I'm going to need more information than this." "Ah, yes, that one." Alexei came over, peering at the note. "Beautiful Baroque religious icon, possibly from destroyed Czech monastery. Seller did not want questions, I did not want to know answers. Win-win situation." "That's not how provenance works." "In legitimate art world, no. In my world sometimes is exactly how it works." He patted her shoulder. "You do best you can with information available. When there is no information, you write private collection, provenance unclear. This is art world code for don't ask uncomfortable questions." Aurora spent the rest of the morning examining pieces, taking photographs, making notes. Some were clearly legitimate, auction catalogs, certificates of authenticity, clean paper trails. Others existed in that murky space where legality was more suggestion than certainty, and a few were almost certainly stolen, though Alexei's careful lack of documentation made it impossible to prove. She was cataloging a series of small impressionist paintings, possibly Monet, possibly very good fakes, when Vladimir arrived around noon, carrying bags of food that smelled incredible. "Lunch," he announced. "I figured you'd both forget to eat." "We are not forgetting," Alexei protested. "We are simply prioritizing beauty over hunger." "You're 73, father. You need to eat regularly." "I am 75, and I will eat when I am hungry, not when clock says I should eat." Vladimir looked at Aurora. "He's 75. He lies about his age because he thinks it makes him seem more vigorous." "I do not need to seem vigorous. I am vigorous." Watching them bicker was oddly humanizing. For a moment, they were just family, annoying each other with the comfort of people who'd been doing it for decades. They ate lunch at a massive dining table, Georgian food this time, rich and spiced and complex. Aurora was beginning to suspect that working for the Volkovs was going to be extremely bad for her waistline and extremely good for her culinary education. "So," Vladimir said, watching Aurora sort through documentation, "what's the verdict? Is my father's collection treasure or trash?" "Both," Aurora said honestly. "Some of these pieces are museum quality. That Serebriakova we saw at the gallery. You have 3 more of her works here. Legitimate, authenticated, beautiful. Worth probably $500,000 combined, maybe more." Alexei beamed. "See, I have excellent taste." "You also have what appears to be a paint-by-numbers' Russian landscape that someone tried to pass off as 19th century. "That one," Alexei pointed accusingly at Vladimir. "Your mother bought that one. I told her it was garbage. She said I had no romance in my soul. Turns out I was right." "You're still not throwing it away," Vladimir observed. "It's been on that wall for 20 years. "Because your mother liked it. Sentiment has value too, just not monetary value." Aurora watched this exchange with growing understanding. The collection wasn't just about money or status. It was memory, history, pieces of a life lived across continents and decades. Some items were valuable because they cost a lot. Others were valuable because they meant something. She spent the afternoon working through the inventory, her art history degree finally proving its worth. She identified a previously unknown work by a minor Russian symbolist painter, corrected several misattributions, and gently informed Alexei that the painting he'd paid $50,000 for was actually worth about $500. "Bastard," Alexei muttered about the seller. "He had credentials, papers, everything." "The papers were forged," Aurora explained, showing him the inconsistencies. "Not even good. Forgeries. See how the authentication stamp doesn't match the gallery's actual logo. It's close, but the font is wrong. You can tell font is wrong. I wrote a 20-page paper on authentication fraud. You learn to spot these things." Vladimir, who'd been working on his laptop in the corner, looked up with something like respect. You can identify forgeries by font. Among other things, there are a lot of ways to fake authenticity. Most forgers get the big things right but mess up small details. Wrong paper age, incorrect stamp design, historical inaccuracies in the documentation. You just have to know what to look for. Useful skill, Vladimir observed. Very useful, Alexei agreed, looking at the forged papers with new appreciation. Aurora, you find other forgeries in collection. Probably. I'll need time to review everything properly. But yes, I'd estimate maybe 5 to 10% of what you have is either fake or misattributed. This is acceptable loss. Better to know truth now than discover later when trying to sell. He looked thoughtful. You know, there is FBI agent who has been very interested in my art collection. Thinks I am hiding something. You could help with this. Aurora's heart rate spiked. Help how? If FBI wants to examine collection, you provide documentation. Professional, complete, showing everything acquired legally or with unclear provenance. You are legitimate art consultant. You have no knowledge of criminal activity. You simply authenticate and catalog. This protects me because you can honestly say you do not know where pieces come from. It was the plausible deniability conversation again, but more concrete now. They wanted her to be a buffer between the collection and law enforcement. A legitimate face on possibly illegitimate holdings. What if they ask me direct questions? Aurora asked carefully. You answer honestly, Vladimir said. You're a consultant hired to evaluate art. You don't know purchase. Histories, you don't know sellers. You only know what you've documented, which will be entirely truthful, just incomplete. Incomplete truth is still truth, Alexei added. We are not asking you to lie, Aurora. We are asking you to know only what you need to know. This protects you as much as it protects us. It was logical, reasonable even, and completely terrifying. I need to think about this, Aurora said. Of course, is big responsibility. Alexei stood, stretching. But remember, you are already here, already part of this. Question is not whether you help or not. Question is how you help and how we protect you while you do. He left the room, giving Aurora and Vladimir privacy that felt pointed. He's right, you know, Vladimir said quietly. The moment you accepted this job, you became involved. The FBI doesn't care about intentions. They care about associations. You work for us now. That makes you interesting to them. So I'm trapped. You're protected. There's a difference. Vladimir closed his laptop, giving her his full attention. My father likes you. That's not a small thing. People he likes get taken care of. People he doesn't, he shrugged. You're smart enough to know which position is preferable. This is insane. I just wanted to pay off student loans. And now you can. Plus, you're doing what you studied for. How many art history majors can say that? His tone was practical, almost kind. Aurora, I know this isn't what you imagined, but it's what you have. Make peace with it or don't. Just understand that making peace is the easier path. Aurora looked around the penthouse, at the millions of dollars in art, at the life she'd somehow stumbled into. What if I can't? Can't what? Make peace with it. Can't be the person this job needs me to be. What if I'm not hard enough, like you said? What if I break? Vladimir was quiet for a long moment. Then he stood, walked over to where she sat surrounded by papers and photographs, and crouched down to her eye level. "Then you break," he said simply, "and we pick up the pieces and put you back together. That's what family does." "I'm not family, I'm an employee. In my father's world, the distinction isn't as clear as you think." He stood, offered his hand to help her up. "Come on, you've done enough for today. I'll drive you home." "I have a car." "I know. Yuri will bring it to your apartment later. Right now, you look exhausted, and I don't trust exhausted people to drive safely." He wasn't asking. Aurora took his hand, let him pull her to her feet, and followed him to the elevator. They rode down in silence, and she was grateful for it. Her mind was too full for conversation, full of paintings and prices, of forged papers and plausible deniability, of choices that weren't really choices. Vladimir's car was waiting outside, a sleek black sedan that probably cost more than her apartment building. He opened the door for her, a gesture that was becoming routine, and drove through Chicago traffic with the easy confidence of someone who'd never worried about parking tickets or speed limits. "Can I ask you something?" Aurora said as they crossed the river. "You can ask, I might not answer." "How did you end up in this life? Did you choose it, or was it just inevitable?" Vladimir was quiet for several blocks. "My father built his empire from nothing, came to America with nothing, made himself into something. I grew up in that world. I never had the option to be anything else." "You never wanted to leave." "Every day," he admitted, surprising her with his honesty. "But leaving isn't simple. It's not like quitting a normal job. The life doesn't let go easily. And," he paused, "my father needs me. Despite all our disagreements, despite everything, he needs me. I can't abandon him." "That sounds like love." "It's probably more like duty. I stopped being able to tell the difference years ago." He glanced at her. "Why are you asking?" "Because I'm trying to understand if this is temporary or permanent. If I'm just working a job, or if I'm being absorbed into something I can't escape." Honest answer, little of both. You can leave eventually, but it'll cost you relationships, security, the money you've gotten used to. Everything has a price, Aurora. You're just figuring out what price you're willing to pay. He pulled up outside her apartment building, but didn't immediately unlock the doors. "For what it's worth," he said, "I think you'll be okay. You're smart, careful, and you know when to be honest and when to keep quiet. Those are survival skills in this world. Use them." "Thanks, I think." It was a compliment. He unlocked the doors. "Get some rest. Tomorrow we'll show you the second location. It's where my father keeps the really interesting pieces." "More interesting than what I saw today." Vladimir's smile was sharp. "Much more interesting and much more problematic. Sleep well." "Aurora." She got out of the car and watched him drive away, then looked up at her apartment building, shabby, familiar, safe. Except it wasn't safe anymore. Nothing was safe anymore. Somewhere in the shadows, Yuri was watching, keeping her secure, keeping her trapped. Same thing, really. Aurora went inside, made tea out of habit, and sat by her window. She thought about art and authenticity, about beautiful things with ugly histories, about how easy it was to mistake a good forgery for the real thing if you didn't know what to look for. She thought about how she'd been so focused on cataloging Alexei's collection that she hadn't noticed she was being cataloged too. Evaluated, assessed, determined to be authentic enough to keep, valuable enough to protect. Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "This is Yuri. I am outside if you need anything. Please do not need anything. I would like quiet night." Despite everything, Aurora laughed. Even her bodyguard had personality. She texted back, "I'll try not to need anything. Thanks for watching out for me. Is my job. You make job easy by staying inside and not doing stupid things. Please continue this pattern. No promises, but I'll try." She set her phone down, finished her tea, and went to bed. Tomorrow, she'd see the really interesting pieces at the second location. Tomorrow, she'd step deeper into a world where beauty and danger were so intertwined they might as well be the same thing. Tonight, she'd sleep in her shabby apartment with a Russian bodyguard outside and a Mafia boss's son's number in her phone, and try to remember who she'd been before she became interesting. That girl seemed very far away now, almost like she'd never existed at all. The second location was a warehouse in an industrial area that Google Maps helpfully labeled as "You probably shouldn't be here after dark." Aurora arrived at 10 a.m. with Vladimir, who'd insisted on picking her up personally rather than letting Yuri drive her. "My father's being dramatic about this reveal," Vladimir explained as they pulled up to a nondescript building that looked like it stored plumbing supplies or possibly bodies. "He wants to see your reaction himself." "Dramatic how?" "You'll see." Inside, the warehouse had been transformed into something between a high-security vault and a private museum. Climate control, sophisticated alarm systems, motion sensors, and, Aurora noticed, several armed guards trying to look casual while clearly being anything but. Alexei stood in the center of the space, arms spread wide like a showman. "Welcome," he announced, "to the pieces I cannot display publicly, for various reasons." "Various reasons meaning they're all stolen?" Aurora asked. "Stolen is such ugly word. I prefer liberated from unappreciative owners." He gestured for her to follow. "Come, I show you why I really hired you." What followed was 2 hours of Aurora's, jaw progressively dropping lower. Let Fabergé egg, unrecorded in any official registry, sitting in a climate-controlled case like it was the most natural thing in the world. "Gift from grateful business partner in St. Petersburg," Alexei said. "Do not ask what I did to earn gratitude." 3 small Rembrandt studies, not major works but authenticated and absolutely priceless. Purchased from private collection in Amsterdam. Seller needed cash quickly, was willing to skip official channels. An illuminated medieval manuscript that should have been in a museum. Rescued from a state sale where idiots thought it was reproduction. I paid fair price for what they thought it was. Not my fault they were wrong. And then, in a separate room with additional security, a painting that made Aurora's breath catch in her throat. It was a Vermeer, small, intimate, a woman reading a letter by a window, light falling across her face in that impossibly perfect way that only Vermeer could capture. Aurora had seen prints of this painting. She'd studied it in art history class. Because it had been stolen from a Boston museum in 1990 and never recovered. "Oh my God," Aurora whispered. "Beautiful, yes." Alexei stood beside her, his voice soft with genuine reverence. "I did not steal it. I want to be clear about this. I purchased it 10 years ago from a man who would not give me provenance. I suspected then, I know now, but Aurora, look at it. How can I give this back? It is too beautiful to hide in museum basement where no one sees it. Here I see it every day. I appreciate it properly. It's stolen art, Mr. Volkov. This is, this is major. FBI has entire task force looking for this painting." "Yes, I know, is why it stays here in warehouse with excellent security and no official documentation." He turned to her, his expression serious. "This is real test, Aurora. Now you know, now you have seen. Question is, what do you do with knowing?" Aurora stared at the Vermeer, her mind racing. This wasn't unclear provenance or plausible deniability. This was a famous stolen painting, one of the art world's greatest unsolved mysteries, hanging in a Chicago warehouse owned by the Russian Mafia. "Why are you showing me this?" she asked quietly. "Because I need to know if you can be trusted with truth. Not just convenient truth, not just maybe illegal truth. Real truth, uncomfortable truth." Alexei moved closer. "You are shocked, yes. Probably thinking about right thing to do, about laws and ethics and all those beautiful principles they teach in university. I'm thinking about not going to prison for art trafficking." "Smart thinking, but here is reality. If you report this, you put yourself in danger. Not from me," he added quickly. "I would not hurt you for doing what you think is right, but from others. From FBI who would want you to testify, to be informant, to destroy your life in pursuit of justice. From my competitors who would see you as liability. From everyone who suddenly has interest in pretty girl who knows too much." Vladimir, who'd been silent until now, spoke up. "He's not threatening you, Aurora. He's being honest about consequences. In this world, knowing something dangerous means you're in danger from all sides. So what? I just pretend I didn't see a stolen Vermeer. You catalog it as unknown provenance, possibly 17th century Dutch school, requires further authentication," Vladimir said, "which is technically true. You can't prove it's the stolen one without access to museum records and scientific testing. You're just an art consultant noting what you observe." "That's plausible deniability," Alexei finished. "Again, this is how we protect you, Aurora. You see painting, you note it exists, but you do not make conclusions about origin. You are not detective. You are not FBI. You are art expert doing job." Aurora looked at the Vermeer, at the woman reading her letter, captured in a moment of quiet intimacy by a master who'd been dead for centuries. The painting had survived wars, theft, time itself. And now it was here, in a warehouse in Chicago, appreciated by a criminal who genuinely loved it. If I do this, she said slowly, if I just document it without reporting it, I'm complicit. I'm part of the crime. You are survivor, Alexei corrected. You are practical person making practical choice. You think museum will appreciate this painting more than me. It will go in storage, temperature-controlled box, seen by no one. Here I see it. I appreciate it. I understand what Vermeer was trying to capture, that perfect moment of light, of privacy, of beauty in ordinary things. Is this really crime? Or is crime locking beauty away where no one can see? That's not how law works. No, but is how life works. He sighed, suddenly looking his actual 75 years. I do not ask you to become criminal, Aurora. I ask you to understand that world is complicated, that sometimes right answer is not obvious, that survival requires flexibility in thinking. And if I can't be flexible, then you walk away now. I give you money for your work so far, you leave, you forget everything you saw. No hard feelings, no danger. I give you my word, but you must decide now. Stay and accept complicated truth or leave and keep your simple morality. Both are valid choices. Aurora looked at Vladimir, who was watching her with that careful neutrality that meant he was actually deeply invested in her answer. What do you think I should do? She asked him. I think you should do what you can live with, but I also think you should understand that perfect choices don't exist, only choices with different costs. That's not helpful. It's not meant to be helpful. It's meant to be true. Aurora walked closer to the Vermeer, studying the brushwork, the luminosity, the sheer mastery of technique. The painting was absolutely authentic. She had no doubt, which meant she was looking at a stolen masterpiece worth tens of millions of dollars. She thought about her grandmother, about survival and pragmatism, about the fact that reporting this would destroy her life almost as surely as keeping quiet would compromise her integrity. She thought about student loans paid off, about security, about actually using her degree for something meaningful, even if that meaning was complicated. She thought about the fact that she'd already made this choice 3 times before, accepting the cleaning job, accepting the collection management position, accepting Vladimir's card. This was just the logical endpoint of a path she'd already started walking. If I stay, she said finally, I need guarantees. What kind of guarantees? Alexei asked. First, if FBI ever questions me, you provide lawyer. Best lawyer money can buy. Someone who specializes in art law and can protect me. Agreed. Second, I don't lie to law enforcement. Ever. I'll use your plausible deniability. I'll document things carefully, but I won't commit perjury. I won't falsify documents. I won't cross that line. Acceptable. I do not want you to lie. Lies are discovered. Truth is much safer, even when incomplete. Third, I want exit plan. If this gets too dangerous, if I decide I can't do this anymore, you let me walk away. Set me up somewhere safe, new identity if necessary, enough money to start over. No revenge, no loose ends, no accidents. Alexei looked at Vladimir, who nodded slightly. This is reasonable request, Alexei said. But exit plan comes with condition. You take nothing with you. No documentation, no photographs, no evidence. You leave clean, you stay silent, and we part as friends. A deal. Then we have agreement. Alexei extended his hand. Welcome to my real collection, Aurora Peterson. Now you see what I actually do. Aurora shook his hand, feeling like she just signed something in blood rather than sealing a verbal contract. But the truth was, she'd made her choice the moment she walked into this warehouse. Everything after was just negotiating the terms of her surrender. So, she said, trying to inject some normalcy into the moment, what else are you hiding here that's going to make me question all my life choices? Alexei's laugh boomed through the warehouse. Oh, many things. Come, I show you stolen Monet, also possibly stolen Degas, and definitely stolen Klimt drawing, is like museum of FBI most wanted list. That's not comforting, Mr. Volkov. Is not meant to be comforting, is meant to be honest. He led her deeper into the warehouse, pointing out pieces like a proud parent showing off successful children. This is why I need you, Aurora. Someone who understands value, who can authenticate, who can help me know what I actually have. Because some of these, he gestured vaguely, might also be forgeries. Even criminals get cheated sometimes. The irony wasn't lost on Aurora. She spent the rest of the morning examining paintings that shouldn't exist in private. Hands taking careful notes that said everything and nothing at all. 17th century Dutch school attributed to Vermeer, provenance unknown. 19th century French impressionist, possibly Monet, requires further study. Austrian symbolist drawing, early 20th century, unclear origin. All technically true, all carefully incomplete. By the time they broke for lunch, delivered by Constantine's again, because apparently the Volkovs had the restaurant on speed dial, Aurora's head was spinning. You are doing well, Vladimir observed as they ate. Most people panic at this stage. Who says I'm not panicking internally? Your hands are steady, that's what matters. He glanced at his father, who was on the phone arguing with someone in rapid Russian. He trusts you now. That's significant. Why? I haven't done anything yet. You stayed. You didn't run, didn't threaten to report us, didn't fall apart. In my father's world, that's everything. Vladimir leaned back, studying her. You're going to do well in this life, Aurora. You have the right instincts. The right instincts for becoming a criminal. The right instincts for surviving complicated situations. There's a difference. Is there? Because from where I'm sitting, they look pretty similar. Then you're learning. He smiled, and for a moment it was genuine, not the calculating expression of a mafia boss's son, but something almost warm. Come on. Let me show you the third location before my father talks your ear off about his Klimt. There's a third location. Of course. Did you think 2 warehouses full of stolen art was enough? He stood, offered his hand. Welcome to the deep end, Aurora. Try not to drown. She took his hand, let him pull her up, and followed him back into a world where beauty and crime were so entangled they might as well be the same thing. Somewhere along the way, she'd stopped asking if she could do this. Now she was just trying to figure out how to do it without losing herself entirely. The answer, she suspected, was that you couldn't. You just learned to live with the pieces of yourself you left behind. The third location was in a completely different part of the city, an upscale neighborhood where private wealth bought privacy, and no one asked uncomfortable questions. It was a brownstone that looked like any other wealthy person's residence, complete with a discreet security system and curtains that prevented anyone from seeing inside. "This is where my father lives," Vladimir explained as they pulled up. "The penthouse is for show, for business meetings. This is home. The fact that he's bringing you here means something." "What does it mean?" "That you're not just an employee anymore." They entered through a side entrance, and Aurora found herself in a space that was somehow both opulent and comfortable. The art here wasn't displayed like trophies. It was integrated into the living space, personal and chosen with care. Family photographs sat on shelves alongside priceless artifacts. A well-worn armchair faced a painting that Aurora immediately recognized as a Chagall. "He sits there every morning," Vladimir said, following her gaze. "Drinks his tea and looks at that painting, says it reminds him of his mother. It's beautiful. Most of what's here is. This is the collection that matters to him. The warehouse pieces are investments, statements, trophies. These," he gestured around the room, "these are personal." Alexei appeared from another room, carrying a tea service on a tray. The sight of the fearsome Russian mob boss playing host was so incongruous that Aurora nearly laughed. "Sit, sit," he commanded, setting the tray down. "We drink tea like civilized people before I show you my treasures." They sat in the comfortable living room, drinking excellent Russian tea from delicate china cups that had probably witnessed decades of history. Alexei told stories about various pieces, where he'd found them, why they mattered, the memories attached to each one. There was a small wooden icon that his grandmother had given him before he left Russia, a set of illustrated children's books from the Soviet era that he'd read to Vladimir as a child, a painting of the Siberian landscape that made him homesick and content at the same time. "This is why I collect," Alexei said, gesturing around the room. "Not for money, not for status, for connection, to past, to beauty, to things that matter." He looked at Aurora seriously. "You understand this, yes. You studied art not for money. There is no money in art history, but because you wanted to understand why humans make beautiful things." "Yes," Aurora said, surprised by how well he'd articulated something she'd struggled to explain to practical friends and family. "Art is how we try to capture what matters. Love, loss, beauty, truth. It's humanity's attempt to make meaning last." "Exactly," Alexei slapped the table with satisfaction. "This is why I like you. You understand. Now come, I show you pieces that have meaning." What followed was the most intimate collection Aurora had yet seen. No stolen masterpieces here, just beautiful things chosen with love and care. Russian avant-garde pieces from the early Soviet era, photographs of people long dead, letters in faded ink, a child's drawing, carefully preserved, that Vladimir had made when he was 6. "This is your real collection," Aurora said softly. "Everything else is just accumulation, but this is what you actually care about." "Yes," Alexei's voice was uncharacteristically gentle. "These pieces I leave to Voladia when I die. The rest, the warehouses, the stolen paintings, the investments, those can be sold, distributed, whatever makes sense. But these stay in family. These matter." Vladimir was quiet beside her, and Aurora realized this might be the first time his father had articulated this clearly. There was something raw in the air, something vulnerable. "I need you to catalog these two," Alexei continued. "Not for value, I don't care about value, but for history. So Voladia knows what everything is, where it came from, why it mattered. So when I am gone, these stories don't die with me." "I can do that," Aurora said. "I'd be honored to." "Good," Alexei cleared his throat, emotion firmly repackaged. "Now I have meeting with associates, boring business talk. Voladia will stay, help you start on this collection. Take your time, touch things carefully. And Aurora," he paused at the doorway, "thank you for understanding why this matters." He left, and Aurora found herself alone with Vladimir in a room full of carefully preserved memories. "He's never done this before," Vladimir said quietly. "Brought someone here, asked them to help with this. My mother used to help him organize things, but after she died, he just kept collecting without any system." "How long ago did she pass?" 15 years, cancer, quick and brutal." Vladimir moved to a photograph. On the mantel, a striking woman with dark hair and kind eyes, laughing at something off camera. "She would have liked you. She always said my father needed more honest people around him." "What was she like?" "Strong, principled in her own way. She knew what my father did, never pretended otherwise, but she also drew lines. Certain things she wouldn't tolerate, certain values she insisted on." He smiled slightly. "She's the one who taught me that you can be part of this life without being consumed by it. That honor exists even in dishonorable professions." "Do you believe that?" "I have to. Otherwise, what am I?" He turned from the photograph. "Come on. Let me show you where he keeps the documents for this collection. It's actually organized, believe it or not. When it comes to the personal stuff, he's meticulous." They spent the next few hours going through careful records, and Vladimir was right. This collection was documented with love and precision. Every item had a story, a date, a memory attached. Aurora took notes, photographed pieces, and slowly built a picture of Alexei Volkov as more than just a criminal. As a man who'd fled one country, built an empire in another, and somehow maintained a connection to beauty and meaning through it all. It was late afternoon when Vladimir's phone rang. He glanced at it, and his entire demeanor changed, tension flooding through him like electricity. "What is it?" Aurora asked. "My father, something's wrong," he answered. "Yes," a pause, his expression darkening. "When, how many?" Another pause. "I'm coming, stay where you are." He hung up, already moving. "We need to go now." "What happened?" "FBI raided the warehouse, the one with the Vermeer." He was grabbing his jacket, checking his weapon with practiced efficiency. "They have a warrant, they have agents, and they're tearing the place apart." Aurora's blood turned to ice. "Do they know I was there? Do they know I saw?" "I don't know, but we need to get you somewhere safe. get our stories straight and make sure you're protected." He grabbed her hand, pulling her toward the door. "Everything we discussed about plausible deniability, you're about to put it into practice." They rushed to his car and Aurora's mind was racing. The FBI had the Vermeer. They had the Rembrandt studies. They had evidence of one of the biggest art theft recoveries in history. And she'd been there, cataloging it, documenting it, complicit in it all. "What do I say?" she asked as Vladimir drove with controlled urgency through city traffic. "When they question me, and they will question me, what do I say?" "The truth. You're an art consultant hired to evaluate a private collection. You had no knowledge of the piece's provenance. You were documenting what you saw, not investigating where it came from. That's your story, and you stick to it no matter what they ask." "They're not going to believe that." "They don't have to believe it. They have to prove otherwise." "And they can't. You've been working for us for less than 2 weeks. You haven't falsified any documents. You haven't sold anything. You're just a consultant doing a job. That's your protection." His phone rang again. He answered on speaker. "Father." "Validia, they have everything, all of it. Someone tipped them off. They knew exactly where to look, what they'd find." Alexei's voice was tight with controlled anger. "Someone betrayed us." Aurora's stomach dropped. A betrayal meant someone inside the organization had talked, which meant someone knew about her, knew she'd been there, knew she'd seen the stolen art. "Who?" Vladimir asked, his voice deadly quiet. "I don't know yet, but I will find out. In the meantime, Aurora needs lawyer, good one. They will come for her next. She's new, she's vulnerable, they'll try to flip her." "I won't talk," Aurora said, her voice shaking. "I won't testify against you." "I know you won't, child, but FBI doesn't know this yet. They will pressure. You threaten, you promise you immunity. You must be strong." Alexei paused. "Vladimir, take her to Dmitri. Tell him I sent her. He'll know what to do." "Understood. Stay safe, father." "Always am. You too, son, and Aurora, do not be afraid. We protect our own. Remember this." The call ended and Vladimir immediately dialed another number. "Dmitri, it's Vladimir Volkov. I'm bringing someone to you. My father's orders." "Yes, that Aurora. FBI raid, probably incoming questioning. 30 minutes." He hung up and glanced at Aurora, whose face had gone pale. "Dmitri Kovalenko, best criminal defense attorney in Chicago, specializes in art law, federal cases, and keeping people out of prison. He's expensive, brilliant, and completely ruthless. You do exactly what he says, understand?" "I don't want to go to prison, Vladimir." "You won't. We won't let that happen." His jaw tightened. "I promise you, Aurora, we protect our people. This is what that means." But even as he said it, Aurora could hear the uncertainty underneath, because someone had betrayed them. Someone had talked to the FBI, provided information, arranged the raid. And if someone in the organization couldn't be trusted, then no one was really safe. Not even her. They drove through the darkening city toward the lawyer's office, and Aurora tried to control the panic rising in her chest. She'd made choices. She'd accepted compromises. She'd thought she understood the risks. But understanding risks theoretically, was very different from facing FBI interrogation practically. "What happens if they arrest me?" she asked quietly. "They won't. You haven't committed any crimes they can prove. Worst case, they bring you in for questioning. Dmitri will be there. He won't let them railroad you." "And best case?" Vladimir was quiet for a moment. "Best case, they decide you're not worth pursuing, that you're just what you appear to be, a consultant who didn't know what she was looking at." "Do you believe that will happen?" "I believe we'll make it happen, one way or another." It wasn't the reassurance Aurora wanted, but it was apparently all she was going to get. They pulled up to a sleek office building downtown, and Vladimir led her inside to a suite on the 20th floor. The name on the door read Kovalenko and Associates in understated gold lettering. Inside, a sharp-eyed receptionist took one look at Vladimir and immediately buzzed them through. "He's expecting you. Third door on the right." Dmitri Kovalenko was in his 50s, impeccably dressed, with steel-gray hair and eyes that missed nothing. He looked like he'd been born in a courtroom and raised on case law. "Vladimir, and you must be Aurora Peterson." He shook her hand with a grip that was both professional and assessing. "Sit. Tell me everything. And I mean everything. I can't defend you if I don't know what I'm defending." So Aurora told him. About the cleaning job, about speaking Russian to Alexei, about the collection management position, about the warehouse and the Vermeer, and the moment she'd realized she was looking at stolen art worth millions. Dmitri listened without interrupting, taking occasional notes, his expression neutral. When she finished, he leaned back in his chair and steepled his fingers. "All right," he said. "Here's the situation. The FBI has recovered significant stolen art. They'll be looking for everyone connected to that collection. You're connected. They will question you, probably within the next 24 to 48 hours." "What do I tell them?" "The truth, carefully framed. You're an art history graduate with student loans. You took a cleaning job. The Volkovs were impressed with your knowledge and hired you as a consultant to catalog their collection. You had no knowledge of provenance, no involvement in acquisition, no reason to believe the art was stolen until, when did you realize?" "When I saw the Vermeer, I recognized it from my art history." "Glasses." "Good, so you saw it, you had suspicions, but you're not an expert in art fraud or theft. You documented what you saw as professionally as you could. You had no involvement in the criminal activity. You're a victim of circumstance, employed by people who didn't disclose the nature of their collection." He looked at her intently. "Can you sell that story convincingly?" "It's basically true." "Basically true is the best kind of defense. The FBI will push, they'll threaten, they'll offer immunity in exchange for testimony. You decline. You have nothing to testify about because you weren't involved in any criminal conspiracy. You were hired to catalog art, not investigate it. They're going to say, I should have reported it the moment I recognized the Vermeer. And you'll say you were frightened, uncertain, and seeking legal advice when the FBI conducted their raid, which is now true because you're here with me doing exactly that." Dmitri smiled thinly. "See how this Works, we're not lying. We're just framing truth strategically. Aurora looked at Vladimir, who nodded slightly. Do what he says. Dimitri's kept dozens of people out of prison with strategies like this. All right, Aurora said, trying to sound more confident than she felt. What do I do now? You go home, you act normally. When the FBI comes, and they will come, you decline to answer questions without your attorney present. You call me immediately. I'll meet you wherever they want to conduct the interview. And Aurora, Dimitri's expression softened slightly. Don't let them intimidate you. They're good at that, but you haven't done anything wrong. Remember that. Except she had done something wrong. She'd seen stolen art and documented it without reporting it. She'd taken money from criminals. She'd made choices that skirted legality even if they didn't completely cross it. The FBI came at 7 a.m., precisely when people were most disoriented and vulnerable. Aurora had barely slept, so she was already awake when the knock came, authoritative, unmistakable. She called Dimitri first, as instructed. He answered on the first ring. Don't open the door yet. I'm 15 minutes away. Tell them you're getting dressed and your attorney is en route. Aurora cracked the door open, chain still attached. Two agents stood there, a woman in her 40s with sharp eyes, and a younger man with the eager intensity of someone trying to prove himself. Aurora Peterson. I'm Special Agent Catherine Mills. This is Agent Ryan Torres, FBI. We'd like to ask you some questions about your employment with Alexei Volkov. My attorney is on his way. He'll be here in 15 minutes. Agent Mills' expression tightened. You lawyered up fast. That's interesting. That's smart, Aurora corrected, channeling Dimitri's confidence. I'll cooperate fully once my attorney arrives. They waited in tense silence. Aurora inside her apartment, the agents in the hallway. Yuri had disappeared probably the moment the FBI arrived. Smart. Dimitri showed up in 12 minutes, immaculate despite the early hour. Gentlemen, lady, Dmitri Kovalenko, Ms. Peterson's attorney. Shall we do this somewhere more comfortable than a hallway? They relocated to Aurora's tiny kitchen table, which suddenly felt absurdly small for this conversation. Dimitri sat beside Aurora, his presence both reassuring and terrifying, because needing a criminal defense attorney meant she was in serious trouble. Ms. Peterson, Agent Mills began, when did you start working for the Volkov organization? 2 weeks ago. I was hired as a cleaning contractor initially, then as an art consultant. And in your capacity as art consultant, you visited a warehouse on the south side. Yes, Mr. Volkov asked me to catalog his art collection. Did you recognize any of the pieces? Here it was, the moment of truth. Aurora felt Dimitri's slight pressure against her arm, a reminder to stick to the script. Some pieces looked familiar from my art history studies. I documented what I saw professionally, including a painting stolen from a Boston museum in 1990. I noted a painting that resembled a stolen Vermeer, yes, but I'm not an expert in art theft or authentication. I documented it as unknown provenance, requires further study. Agent Torres leaned forward. You saw a famous stolen painting and didn't immediately report it. I saw a painting that might be a famous stolen painting, Aurora corrected. I'm an art history graduate with student loans, not an FBI agent. I was seeking legal advice about my obligations when you conducted your raid. Convenient timing, Mills observed. Fortunate timing, Dmitri interjected smoothly. My client had legitimate concerns about her employment situation and sought counsel. That's responsible behavior, not suspicious behavior. The interrogation continued for 2 hours. They pushed, prodded, tried different angles. Did she know the art was stolen? Number did Volkov tell her where he acquired pieces? No. Had she been involved in any sales or transfers? No. Did she have knowledge of other criminal activities? No. It was exhausting, repetitive, and clearly designed to catch her in a contradiction. But Aurora stuck to the truth, or at least the carefully framed version of it. Finally, Agent Mills sat back. Ms. Peterson, we believe you're not the criminal here. We believe you're a victim of Volkov's manipulation. Help us build a case against him. Testify about what you saw. We can offer immunity protection. My client declines, Dmitri said immediately. Ms. Peterson should answer for herself, Torres snapped. I decline, Aurora said, her voice steady. I have nothing to testify about. I was hired to catalog art. I did that job to the best of my ability. I had no knowledge of criminal conspiracy. You're protecting a criminal, Mills said, frustration bleeding through her professional demeanor. I'm protecting myself from testifying about things I don't actually know. Aurora met her eyes. I understand you're doing your job, but so was I, and I won't be pressured into making statements about things I wasn't involved in. The agents left 20 minutes later, unsatisfied but without grounds to arrest her. The moment the door closed, Aurora collapsed into a chair, shaking. You did well, Dmitri said. Very well. They have nothing concrete against you. They'll keep investigating. Probably, but they'll find what you've already told them. You're a consultant who documented a collection. Without evidence of knowing participation in criminal activity, they can't charge you with anything. Aurora's phone buzzed. Vladimir, how did it go? Survived. They have nothing. Good, stay home today. We need to talk. I'm coming over. He arrived an hour later looking like he hadn't slept either. The betrayer, he said without preamble, was Kozlov, Dmitri Kozlov, the one who grabbed your wrist. Aurora's stomach dropped. The East Coast partner. Former partner. He'd been cooperating with FBI for months, trying to reduce his own sentence on unrelated charges. He gave them everything: warehouse locations, collection details, shipment information. Vladimir's expression was granite. He's been dealt with. Dealt with meaning. Meaning he's no longer a problem. Don't ask for details you don't want to know. He sat across from her. But here's the important part. He told them about you. Described you as Alexei's new art expert, said you were involved in moving stolen goods, authenticating pieces for sale. He lied, Aurora. He was trying to give them more targets to justify his cooperation. so they think I'm more involved than I actually am. They think it, they can't prove it. Your performance this morning helped with that. But Aurora, this means you're on their radar now, permanently. They'll watch you, investigate you, wait for you to make a mistake. The walls of her small apartment suddenly felt very close. So what do I do? You live your life carefully. You work for my father legitimately. You document his legal holdings, you provide expert consultation, you keep your head down, and you trust no one except me and my father. What about the illegal collection, the warehouse pieces? All seized, which means that problem is solved in a way. My father is furious about losing the art but relieved you're not facing charges. Vladimir's expression softened slightly. He wants to see you. Tonight, family dinner, just the three of us. Is that safe? The FBI might be watching. Let them watch. You're allowed to have dinner with your employer. Everything we do from now on will be completely above board. That's our new strategy, aggressive legitimacy. Aggressive legitimacy. We operate so cleanly, so professionally, so boringly legitimate that the FBI gets tired of watching us and moves on to actual criminals. He stood. 7 o'clock, Constantine's. Wear something nice but not too nice. We're celebrating your survival. He left, and Aurora sat in her apartment trying to process everything. The betrayal, the interrogation, the fact that she'd apparently become part of the Volkov family without quite realizing it. Her phone buzzed again. Unknown number, this is Agent Mills. The offer stands. Immunity, protection, a clean start. Think about it. You don't owe them anything. Aurora stared at the message for a long moment, then deleted it. She'd made her choice. For better or worse, she was in this now. All she could do was survive it with as much integrity as possible, and hope that survival didn't cost her everything she'd been trying to protect in the first place. But Dmitri and Vladimir and Alexei all seemed convinced this strategy would work, and Aurora was too far in to back out now. Vladimir drove her home through dark streets, neither of them speaking much. When they arrived at her building, he walked her to her door, something he'd never done before. "Yuri's outside," he said. "He knows what's happening. If the FBI shows up, he'll call me immediately." "Okay." "Aurora," he paused, seeming to struggle with something. "I know this is terrifying, but my father keeps his promises. We will protect you, no matter what happens." "Why?" she asked suddenly. "Why does he care? I'm just some girl who happened to speak Russian. Why go to all this trouble?" Vladimir was quiet for a long moment. "Because you remind him of my mother. Honest, principled, strong in quiet ways. He sees something in you that he wants to protect, that he couldn't protect when she died." His voice dropped. "And because I asked him to." "You asked him to protect me." "I asked him to take care of you, to make sure you didn't get destroyed by this life." Vladimir's dark eyes met hers. "I don't know what that means yet between us, but I know I don't want you to be another casualty of my father's empire." There was something raw in his voice, something that made Aurora's heart skip in ways that had nothing to do with fear. "Thank you," she said quietly. "Don't thank me yet. FBI hasn't questioned you. We don't know who the betrayer is. This could still go very wrong." He stepped back. "Lock your door, keep your phone charged. And Aurora, don't trust anyone except me, my father, and Dmitri. Until we know who talked, everyone else is suspect." He left, and Aurora locked herself in her apartment, pulled the curtains closed, and sat in the darkness trying to process everything. The FBI had the stolen art. Someone had betrayed the Volkovs. She was about to be questioned about federal crimes. And Vladimir Volkov, dangerous, calculating, criminal Vladimir, had just admitted he cared about what happened to her. Her life had officially become a movie. The kind where you screamed at the protagonist to just leave, to run, to save herself. Except she was the protagonist now, and leaving wasn't an option anymore. All she could do was wait for morning and hope that Dmitri's careful truth-telling would be enough to keep her out of prison. Outside her window in the shadows, Yuri watched. Inside, Aurora sat in the dark and wondered if this was what drowning felt like. Slow and inevitable, with brief moments of air that only made the next submersion worse. Tomorrow, she'd find out if she could swim. Tonight, she just tried to remember how to breathe. Constantine's felt different that evening, more intimate, with fewer patrons and a private table in the back corner. Alexei was already there when Aurora arrived with Vladimir, and the old man stood immediately, embracing her like she was returning from war. "Aurora, you are safe, you are free, this is worth celebrating." He kissed her cheeks, 3 times traditional, and Aurora realized she was no longer startled by the gesture. They sat and vodka appeared without being ordered. Alexei poured 3 glasses, his hands steady despite everything that had happened. "To Aurora," he toasted, "who did not break, did not betray, and did not become weak when pressured by federal agents. You have steel in your spine, child. Your grandmother would be proud." They drank. The vodka burned perfectly. "I want to apologize," Alexei continued, his voice serious. "I put you in danger. I thought I could trust Kozlov, thought I knew my people. I was wrong. This mistake nearly cost you your freedom." "It wasn't your fault," Aurora said. "I made choices too." "Yes, but you made choices with incomplete information. I should have told you about risks sooner, should have protected you better." He leaned forward. "So now I tell you everything. No more secrets. You deserve to know exactly what world you are part of." Vladimir's expression flickered with something, surprise, maybe concern. "Father, are you sure?" "I am sure. Aurora has proven herself. Now we prove ourselves to her." Alexei settled back. "I came to America in 1979, not as refugee, not as immigrant, as KGB operative." Aurora's glass stopped halfway to her mouth. "I was intelligence officer," Alexei continued calmly, "sent to infiltrate Russian immigrant community to monitor dissidents to report back to Moscow. For 10 years I did this job. I was good at it, very good." He smiled without humor. "Then Union collapsed. Moscow had no money to pay operatives. No support, no infrastructure. We were abandoned." "So you went into business for yourself," Aurora said quietly. "So I survived. I had skills, organization, strategy, connections. I used them. Built network, established territory became what Americans call organized crime. He shrugged. Is different from KGB how? Both are about power, control, survival. Only difference is which government pretends to legitimize you. Vladimir was watching Aurora carefully, gauging her reaction. She kept her expression neutral, processing this revelation. "Why are you telling me this?" she asked. "Because you should know who you work for. Not just Russian criminal, former Soviet intelligence officer who became criminal out of necessity, not choice." Alexei's pale eyes were intent. "I collect art because KGB taught me art is currency, is power, is history that survives governments. I protect people I care about because intelligence work taught me loyalty is rarest commodity. I value honesty because I spent decade living lies." "Does the FBI know," Aurora asked, "about your KGB background?" "They suspect, cannot prove. My files were destroyed when Union fell or lost or hidden by people who had reasons to hide them." He smiled thinly. "Is advantage of working for government that no longer exists. Very difficult to verify employment history." Aurora looked at Vladimir. "Did you know?" "I've always known. My mother knew too. She married him anyway." Vladimir's expression was complicated. "My father was never just a criminal, Aurora. He was a patriot who lost his country, then built a new empire in the ruins. It doesn't excuse everything he's done, but it explains it." Food arrived. Pelmeni, beef stroganoff. All the comfort dishes Aurora was learning to associate with serious conversations. They ate in contemplative silence for a while. "There's more," Alexei said finally. "Something you need to know because it affects you now." "Father," Vladimir's voice carried a warning. "She deserves truth, Volodia, all of it." Alexei turned to Aurora. "The art collection, the legitimate pieces, not stolen ones, they are not just for me. They are insurance, investment, inheritance for Vladimir. But also," he paused, choosing words carefully, "they are collateral for deals I made years ago. Promises to certain people in Russia, people who have power, who expect favors." "You're still connected to Russian intelligence," Aurora said, the pieces clicking together. "Not officially, but men I worked with, men who became oligarchs and politicians. Remember, sometimes they ask for help, sometimes I provide it. In exchange, they leave me alone, let me operate without interference from Moscow." "What kind of help?" "Information, connections, occasionally items that need to move discreetly across borders." He met her eyes. "Art is perfect for this. Valuable, portable, easy to hide. Painting can carry more than just beauty, can carry secrets." Aurora set down her fork, appetite gone. "Are you telling me some of the art I've been cataloging is part of intelligence operations?" "No, I am telling you it might be in future. And if it is, you need to understand what you are handling. Not just art, but leverage, blackmail, currency in games played by dangerous people." "Jesus Christ," Aurora whispered. Vladimir reached across the table, covering her hand with his. "This is why my father is telling you now, so you can leave if you want. Take the money you've earned, disappear, start over somewhere safe. No judgment, no consequences, Just get out while you still can." Aurora looked between them. Alexei, the former KGB officer turned mob boss, watching her with those pale, calculating eyes. Vladimir, the sun raised in shadows, offering her an exit she probably wouldn't survive taking. "If I leave," she said slowly, "what happens to me, really?" "We set you up somewhere far from Chicago," Vladimir said. "New identity, enough money to start over, no contact with us ever again. You'd be free." "Would I be safe?" Vladimir hesitated. That hesitation told her everything. "The people my father deals with," he said carefully, "they're not forgiving of loose ends. We could protect you for a while, but if someone wanted to find you badly enough, wanted to use you as leverage against us." He didn't finish the sentence. "So my choices are stay and be part of this, or leave and be a target anyway." "Or stay and be protected," Alexei interjected. "Not just protected. Family. We take care of family, Aurora. Better than we take care of anyone else." "Family," Aurora laughed, sharp and bitter. "2 weeks ago I was cleaning floors. Now I'm caught between the FBI and Russian intelligence, cataloging art that might be part of international espionage, and you're calling me family." "Yes," Alexei said simply, "because you have proven yourself, because you did not break, because you understand value of loyalty, of honesty, of honor, even in dishonorable circumstances." He leaned forward. "I have no daughter, Aurora. I have son I love but who lives in darkness because of choices I made. When I look at you, stubborn, principled, surviving despite everything, I see what I wish I had protected better, what I failed to give Vladimir, chance at normalcy." "There's nothing normal about this situation." "No, but there is family, there is protection, there is purpose." Alexei's voice softened. "Your grandmother fled Russia for better life. You fled debt and poverty for better life. We are all running from something, Aurora. Question is whether we run alone or together." Aurora looked at Vladimir, whose dark eyes held something she was beginning to recognize. Not just calculation, but genuine concern. Maybe even care. "If I stay," she said, "I need one more thing, complete honesty. No more revelations, no more things you should know. Everything right now." "Fair request," Alexei agreed. He took a deep breath. "The Vermeer the FBI seized, it was bait. I acquired it specifically to be found, to satisfy their investigation, to make them think they had won. The real treasures, the pieces that matter, they were never in that warehouse." "You planned the raid?" Aurora asked, shocked. "I planned to redirect their attention, yes. Through Kozlov, who I knew was talking to them. I gave him information, let him think he was betraying me, let FBI think they were winning." He smiled coldly. "Kozlov was useful idiot. FBI got their stolen art, closed their case. I kept what actually matters. Everyone wins." "Except Kozlov," Vladimir added darkly. "Except Kozlov," Alexei agreed without remorse. "He grabbed you, disrespected you, then tried to destroy you with FBI. His fate was sealed by his own actions." Aurora's hands were shaking. This was deeper than she'd imagined. Not just crime, strategic manipulation, intelligence, tradecraft, playing federal agents like chess pieces. "The pieces that matter," she said. "Where are they?" "Here," Alexei said, all around you. Aurora looked around Konstantin's restaurant with new eyes. The artwork on the walls, pieces she'd barely noticed, were originals, museum-quality originals, hidden in plain sight in a basement restaurant where no one would think to look. Konstantin is family, Alexei explained. Not blood family, brotherhood family, former KGB like me. This restaurant is cover, is meeting place, is vault. The art on these walls is worth $30 million. FBI has never looked here once. It was brilliant, terrifying, but brilliant. And you want me to catalog these too, Aurora said. I want you to understand them, to know their value, their history, their purpose. Because Aurora, Alexei's expression grew serious. When I die, these pieces become Vladimir's responsibility. Burden and blessing both. I need someone I trust to help him navigate that future. Someone principled who will tell truth even when truth is uncomfortable. You want me to be his advisor, permanently. I want you to be family. What form that takes, advisor, friend, partner, that is for you and Vladimir to decide. But yes, I want you in our lives for good. Aurora looked at Vladimir, who'd been uncharacteristically quiet. What do you want? She asked him directly. I want, he stopped, seemed to struggle with something. I want you to stay, not because my father needs you, because I do. His voice dropped. This life, it makes you hard, makes you suspicious, isolated, unable to trust anyone. But you're different. You stayed honest even when dishonesty was easier. You stayed strong even when being weak would have been understandable. You're real in a world of carefully constructed lies. That's not a good reason to want someone around. It's the best reason I have. He met her eyes. I know what I'm asking. I know it's not fair, not normal, not anything you imagine for yourself, but I'm asking anyway. Stay. Help us. Be part of this family because I think you make us better, and maybe we can keep you from being destroyed by it. The restaurant was quiet around them. Konstantin had made sure they had privacy. The old KGB officer understanding, probably better than anyone, the weight of the conversation happening at this table. Aurora thought about her grandmother, about survival and pragmatism, about the fact that her art history degree, her supposedly useless degree, had become the key to everything, about choices that weren't really choices but just different flavors of necessity. If I stay, she said slowly, I have conditions. Name them, Alexei said. First, no more lies, no more revelations. I need to know everything I'm dealing with, complete transparency. Agreed. Second, I don't participate in anything illegal. I document art, I provide expertise, but I'm not moving contraband or helping with intelligence operations. Acceptable. We keep you clean, protect your deniability. Third, she looked at Vladimir. I need time to figure out what this is between us. No pressure, no expectations, just space to understand if what I'm feeling is real or just Stockholm Syndrome. Vladimir's mouth quirked. That's fair, and for the record, I think it's real, but you should be sure. Then I'll stay, Aurora said. God help me, I'll stay. Alexei's smile was genuine and warm. Then we are family now, officially, And family we take care of. He raised his glass. To Aurora Peterson, stubbornest, bravest, most principled art consultant in Chicago, may she keep us honest when everything else in our lives is lie. They drank and Aurora felt something shift inside her. Not surrender exactly, not acceptance either. Just recognition that she'd stopped fighting against the current and started learning to swim with it. For better or worse, she was a Volkov now. Everything else would have to figure itself out from there. 3 months later, Aurora stood in front of a Kandinsky at the Art Institute of Chicago, legitimately. She was there as Alexei Volkov's art consultant, evaluating a piece he was considering purchasing through proper channels, auction house, authentication certificates, the whole legitimate process. It still felt surreal. Her life had settled into a rhythm that was almost normal if you ignored the bodyguard who followed her everywhere, and the fact that her employer was a former KGB officer. She'd moved into a better apartment, safe, comfortable, with actual heat that worked. Her student loans were paid off completely. She even had savings. The FBI had stopped watching her after 6 weeks, apparently convinced she was exactly what she claimed to be, a consultant doing legitimate work. Agent Mills had sent one final text, "The offer still stands," which Aurora had deleted without responding. She'd made her choice. For better or worse, she was sticking with it. "What do you think?" Vladimir's voice came from beside her. He'd insisted on accompanying her to the museum, ostensibly for security, but really because he seemed to genuinely enjoy watching her work. "It's authentic," Aurora said, studying the brushwork. "Early 1920s, probably 1923 or 24. The composition is strong, the color theory is perfect. Your father would love it. Price is reasonable. For a Kandinsky, it's actually a steal. The auction house undervalued it slightly. They're focusing on his later work, and this earlier piece isn't getting the attention it deserves. So we bid on it." "You bid on it. I just provide the expert opinion." Aurora smiled. "I'm keeping my hands clean, remember." "Right, plausible deniability." Vladimir's expression was warm, amused. "You've gotten good at that." "I had excellent teachers." Over the past 3 months, something had developed between them. Something that started as survival strategy and evolved into genuine connection. They had dinner twice a week, always in public places, always completely proper. They talked about art and history, and everything except the criminal empire his father ran. Vladimir was surprisingly well-read, surprisingly thoughtful when he wasn't being calculating. And Aurora was beginning to realize that she was falling for him, which was either the worst idea she'd ever had or somehow, impossibly, the right one. They left the museum and walked through Millennium Park, Yuri trailing at a discreet distance. It was early evening, the city lights just beginning to flicker on, and Chicago looked beautiful in that way cities do when you're happy and everything feels possible. "My father wants to talk to you," Vladimir said as they walked. "Tonight, something important." Aurora's stomach tightened. Good important or bad important? "I think good, but with him, you never know until he tells you." They met Alexei at his brownstone, the home location, not the business one. He was in his comfortable chair facing the Chagall, tea in hand, looking contemplative. "Aurora, sit. We have things to discuss." She sat, Vladimir settling beside her in a gesture that had become natural, protective, but also intimate. "I am old," Alexei began without preamble. "Older than I pretend. My health is not what it was. I have maybe 5 years, maybe 10, not more." "Father," Vladimir started. "Is truth, Voladia, we must face truth." He turned to Aurora. "When I die, everything goes to Vladimir. The legitimate businesses, the properties, the art collection, all of it. But collection is special. Is history, is memory, is pieces of life lived. Across continents, I need someone to help him manage this. Someone who understands value beyond money." "I've already agreed to do that," Aurora said. "You know I will." "I know, but I want to make it official, legal. I want you as curator of Volkov collection, with salary, with title, with recognition. Not hidden consultant, real position." Aurora blinked. That's a significant role." "You have earned it. 3 months of excellent work, of keeping us legitimate, of building proper documentation. Museums are starting to take us seriously. Auction houses respect your evaluations. You have made Volkov name mean something in art world beyond just probably criminal." "I don't know what to say." "Say yes. Say you will help my son preserve this collection, this history, these memories when I am gone. Say you will keep him honest when everything else in his life is corruption and compromise." Aurora looked at Vladimir, who was watching her with an intensity that made her a heart race. "There's something else," Vladimir said quietly. "My father thinks I should marry you." Aurora choked on air. "What?" "I told him it was too soon, too complicated, too much to ask," Vladimir continued, a slight smile playing at his lips. "But he's stubborn, and honestly, he might be right." "You can't be serious." "I'm always serious. It's my defining characteristic." Vladimir turned to face her fully. "Aurora, I know this is insane. I know you've been in our lives for 3 months and most of that has been survival and strategy. But somewhere in there something real happened, at least for me. And I hope maybe for you too." "Vladimir, I'm not asking you to marry me today. I'm asking if you'd consider it, eventually, when you're sure. When this feels less like Stockholm Syndrome and more like actual choice." His voice softened. "Because I think you make me better, and I think I could make you happy if you let me try." Alexei was watching this exchange with undisguised satisfaction. "Is good match," he pronounced. "She keeps you honest. You keep her safe. Together, you preserve what I built without being destroyed by it. What more can old man ask for?" Aurora's mind was reeling. Marriage. To a mobster's son. To a man who'd watched her navigate FBI interrogations and KGB history and stolen Vermeers without breaking. To someone who'd somehow become the most real thing in her increasingly surreal life. "I need time," she said, "to think, to be sure this is what I want, not just what circumstances are pushing me toward." "Take all the time you need," Vladimir said. "I'm patient, and Aurora, I'm not going anywhere. Neither are you, I think. So we have time to figure this out. But accept curator position now, Alexei interjected. This is separate from romance. This is professional recognition you deserve. I accept the curator position, Aurora said, her voice steadier. And Vladimir, I'll think about everything else. Seriously. Think about it. That's all I'm asking. Alexei beamed. Good, this is settled. Now we celebrate with vodka and terrible Russian television. Volodya, turn on the satellite. Aurora needs to understand our cultural heritage of melodramatic soap operas. The evening dissolved into unexpected normalcy. Watching Russian TV with subtitles, Alexei providing sarcastic commentary, Vladimir translating idioms Aurora's grandmother had never taught her. It was domestic and strange and somehow perfect. When Vladimir drove her home later, they sat in the car outside her building for a moment, neither quite ready to say goodbye. I meant what I said, Vladimir told her. About all of it. I know my life isn't normal. I know I can't offer you white picket fences and conventional happiness, but I can offer you protection, purpose, partnership, and maybe, if we're lucky, something like love. You think we could have that? Real love, not just survival strategy. I think we already do, we're just too stubborn to admit it yet, he smiled. Your grandmother would be proud, you know. You survived impossible circumstances with integrity intact. That's not nothing. She'd probably also think I was insane for considering marrying into the Russian Mafia. Probably, but she'd understand the pragmatism of it. He reached over, tucked a strand of hair behind her ear in a gesture that was tender and careful. Think about it. Take your time. I'll be here when you're ready. Aurora got out of the car but turned back before closing the door. Vladimir, I think I already know my answer. I'm just scared to say it out loud yet. Because it's yes. Because it's yes, and that terrifies me. His smile was genuine, warm, transformative. Good. You should be terrified. Love is terrifying. But it's also the best thing we've got in this mess of a world. He drove away, and Aurora stood on the sidewalk watching his tail lights disappear. Yuri materialized from the shadows, nodded at her respectfully, then resumed his invisible watch. Inside her apartment, nice now, safe, warm, Aurora made tea and thought about impossible choices and unexpected endings. About how she'd started this journey as a poor cleaning lady with student debt and a useless degree, and somehow ended up as curator of a multi-million-dollar art collection, with a former KGB officer calling her family and his son, offering her a future that should have been terrifying, but instead felt like coming home. Her phone buzzed. A text from Vladimir, sleep well, dream of legitimate art acquisitions and boring paperwork. Nothing criminal, I promise. She texted back, you're a terrible liar, but I appreciate the effort. I learned from the best. Good night, Aurora. Good night, Vladimir. She set her phone down and looked around her apartment. At the life she'd built from desperation and compromise, from Russian greetings and stolen paintings, from choices that weren't really choices but somehow led her exactly where she needed to be. Her grandmother had fled Russia for a better life. Aurora had fled poverty and debt for the same thing. They'd both found it in unexpected places, with complicated people, through paths that weren't in any guidebook. But they'd survived. And survival, Aurora was learning, was its own kind of victory. Especially when it came with purpose, protection, and maybe, just maybe, love. She finished her tea, climbed into bed, and fell asleep thinking about Kandinsky paintings and Russian mobsters and the strange, impossible beauty of finding meaning in chaos. Tomorrow, she'd officially become curator of the Volkov collection. Eventually, she'd probably become Vladimir's wife, though she'd make him work for it properly first. Tonight, she was just Aurora Peterson, art history graduate, former cleaning lady, survivor of FBI interrogations and KGB revelations, who'd somehow turned a useless degree into the most useful thing she'd ever possessed. And as she drifted off to sleep, she could almost hear her grandmother's voice, speaking in Russian, saying what she'd said 1,000 times. Life is not about perfect choices, child. It's about making imperfect choices and surviving them with dignity. Aurora had survived. And more than that, she'd won. Not in the way she'd imagined, but in the way that mattered, with integrity, purpose, and a future that was hers to shape. Even if that future included Russian Mafia dinners and stolen Vermeers, and a man who loved her enough to let her find her own way to loving him back. It wasn't the ending she'd expected when she'd greeted Alexei Volkov in Russian 3 months ago. But it was the ending she'd earned. And that, Aurora decided, was more than enough. What a journey we've been on together. Thank you for investing your time and heart in Vladimir, Aurora, and little Alexei's story. If their tale of unexpected love and second chances moved you, please like this video and subscribe so you never miss another heartwarming story. Tomorrow brings a new adventure, and I can't wait to share it with you. Until then, my beautiful family, remember that sometimes love finds us in the most unexpected places.